Donc, bonjour. On voulait juste vous donner le message qu'on a eu des messages pour dire que à cause de la parade gay qu'il y a sur la rue, on a beaucoup de personnes qui ont de la difficulté à trouver du parking. Donc, on va commencer peut-être dans une dizaine de minutes. On s'excuse pour le retard, c'est vraiment circonstanciel. Merci beaucoup d'être à l'heure, en tout cas pour ceux qui sont ici. Si vous applaudissez maintenant, vous allez applaudir toute la conférence parce que le reste annonce.
Oui, c'est ça. Ça, c'est celui Val, mais ils sont tous ouverts. Val, c'est le premier, c'est près des lignes, ensuite avec c'est juste. Je vais fermer tout le reste pour pas qu'il y ait ça.
Non, mais t'as besoin de fermer tout. Là, on est PowerPoint et on est le deuxième. Après, il est là.
Exact. Fait que vous, c'est direct après PowerPoint à Val, puisque son vidéo est. Ouais, j'ai envie d'unir les PowerPoint.
De quoi?
J'ai envie d'unifier les PowerPoint parce que juste après vous, c'est bien. I don't want to fucking up.
No, don't fucking talk.
Vous savez comment ça marche?
Unless you're doing another. Oh yes, I need to do that.
Ça c'est en gros rien. Fait que, inquiète pas, tout le monde voit juste ça. Ça, c'est juste un explication.
So the next one. Okay. So what is it?
Just next and back. That's the only two ways. Don't touch anything.
Okay. I'm gonna feel like my neck. Uh-huh. Actually, we kind of need to get on my. Huh? You good? Mais comment tu vas aller quand on va commencer, vous allez. Do they come to speak because they want to know information about when they're not? They're probably outside. Right there. What? That's gonna be fun, but I think you should. En ce moment, on est chez nous. On va commencer.
So we can begin. Yeah, I feel like it's very bright.
Hey guys!
Salut tout le monde! Xin chào quý vị!
Are you ready for our conference?
Est-ce que vous êtes prêts pour la conférence d'aujourd'hui?
So we want to know a little bit more about who's in the crowd. So, just a second. Okay, well first, shout out. What countries do we have here? Can you guys tell me, where are you guys from?
Canada! Yay!
Canada. No, I'm sure we have other countries here, right?
Do we have people? Okay, do we have Colombians?
I see Ecuador.
Ecuador! Hi, Ecuador!
Welcome.
Welcome!
What else do we have in the crowd?
We have Colombians? Hi, Colombians! Brazilians? Woo! Italians!
Italian?
Italians?
Yeah, I'm Italian, so I guess that kind of counts. Okay. I'll say woo for Portugal. I'm Portuguese too.
Do we have people from Vietnam?
Yeah. Nice.
Oh, do we have
Oh, we have a Lebanese, I know. Oh, okay, cool.
Good. Toronto. Toronto, hi. Yeah.
All right, well.
And I'm Val.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I'm Cynthia. Our tags are here in case you forget. So it's really great to see so many. It's really great to see so many people from different countries here to support the cause for human rights in Vietnam. Speaking for myself personally, I don't have any Vietnamese blood. So I'm often asked why I'm standing here for human rights in Vietnam. I've chosen Vietnam because I see it as a part of a bigger fight for human rights. I've realized that the only reason why I have rights here today is because I was lucky enough to have been born in a country where people have fought, struggled, and made a difference. The result? I am here able to express my thoughts and opinions, a freedom that many people in Vietnam do not have.
And I'm here because I know I can make a difference. Not because I'm more special than anybody else, but because I care. And if you guys are here today, it's because you care too. There are people in this world who sacrifice their lives for the well-being and the happiness and the rights of others, and I believe that that's all that's good in this world. And I want to fight for them, and I think we have to protect them. And this all connects to Vietnamplify as a movement.
Yes, so we are a movement of mixed ethnicity, myself as an example, that started in Montreal to fight for human rights in Vietnam. Sorry, I'm struggling with the mic. We want to educate both Canadians and Vietnamese citizens on the urgent, ongoing human rights violations in Vietnam.
Donc, nous sommes un mouvement formé par des Montréalais d'origines diverses qui veulent sensibiliser la population aux violations des droits de l'homme au Vietnam. Donc, nous voulons éduquer à la fois la population canadienne, mais aussi les citoyens vietnamiens qui sont au Vietnam sur les violations qui arrivent dans leur propre pays.
To do this, we have been using social media platforms to share credible information to as many people as possible.
Donc, pour ce faire, nous utilisons plusieurs médias sociaux pour partager de l'information. Donc, nous demandons, par exemple, si vous voyez une vidéo, un article qui parle, qui dénonce des violations des droits de l'homme au Vietnam, que ce soit par Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch ou d'autres organisations, de faire un hashtag Vietnamplify. Et bien sûr, nous essayons d'organiser des événements, dont la marche et la conférence d'aujourd'hui, par exemple.
Yes, so if you find any photos or videos or articles about the violations in Vietnam, please hashtag Vietnamplify. Here's an example of a video we've posted on Facebook.
So listen very carefully to the song lyric and ring the bell every time you hear words criticizing politics or social situations.
Yeah, you know this how when election time, terrorism time, feels like someone's got me on the fear that they organize. Stick and patronize the people that is breaking law. They literally be breaking rules and turning them into breaking lives. Looking up on this corner, surviving enemies here with me. I be like, what are they trying to sell me here? Nothing but a political party. Another city, here's a mission for the army. Need what it seems. Stay down.
Today, we are constantly bombarded by violent imagery that we mentally delete once the video is done. As you may have noticed, we chose to address the heavy subject of media censorship in Vietnam in a lighthearted way to engage the youth. Canada is an influential country. We hope that with enough support, we can put international pressure on the Vietnamese government to make changes.
Le Canada est un pays qui a beaucoup d'influence et nous espérons qu'avec beaucoup de support, il a la capacité de mettre de la pression internationale sur le Vietnam.
We have decided to be apolitical as a movement. That means we do not represent any political party. We want change within Vietnam. And to do this, it's important for us to educate the Vietnamese citizens so that they can make their own informed decisions about their current government. And to do that, we need to represent education that can be accessible to all.
Donc, nous avons décidé de rester apolitique. Nous voulons du changement à l'intérieur du Vietnam. Donc, nous voulons éduquer les citoyens vietnamiens sur les violations qui arrivent dans leur pays pour qu'ils puissent faire prendre eux-mêmes leurs propres décisions sur leur gouvernement. Et nous voulons représenter une éducation qui est accessible à tous.
Because human rights should be placed above any political system, at the foundation in the creation and development of all laws, we accept people from all political, religious, and social backgrounds. Differences in opinion must be accepted as part of the discussion for human rights.
Les droits humains devraient être placés au-dessus des systèmes politiques et devraient être le fondement dans la création de toutes les lois. Donc, pour cette raison, nous respectons et nous acceptons les personnes de différents bagages éducatifs, sociaux, politiques. Donc, nous comprenons que la différence de croyance fait partie de la discussion des droits humains.
That said, we have gathered many speakers to present today. We want to emphasize that everyone should show respect to the speakers while they present. You will have the chance to speak during the Q&A.
Donc, nous voulons vous rappeler l'importance de respecter les conférenciers pendant leur présentation et tout le monde aura une chance de donner des commentaires ou poser des questions durant la période de questions à la fin.
So we'll have Irwin Cotler, former Minister of Justice and Attorney General, founder and international chair of the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights. He will follow. He will follow us with short words and will later be part of a conversation for human rights. He will be then we will have NDP Deputy Minh Thu Quach, who would like to say a few words as well before we close our opening remarks. Then we will have Ilang Ta and Frederic Van, who will present an overview of the human rights situation in Vietnam.
We will then, yes,
we can also clap.
People don't know you.
They will.
We will then welcome Mr. Dang Chi Hung, a former prisoner of conscience, who will share with us his story. He came all the way from Toronto. To present the Formosa disaster, we were inviting Mr. Nguyen Duy Vinh, who has published 2 scientific articles on Formosa. And today we said we had 2 anonymous speakers. Well, the other anonymous speakers, it's actually an exclusive video from the priest that Unam directly from Vietnam, who has sent us a couple of words personally for our event for this conference today that will follow right after Mr. Nguyen Duy Vinh. And then there's an intermission, sorry, for 15 minutes.
Next, we will have the panel of human rights activists. As previously mentioned, Irwin Cotler will be part of this panel. We also have Michael Simkin, who's a human rights lawyer who is currently defending the refugees in the Snowden case. So he's right there. We will also have Christina Bergeron, who's a co-leader of an Amnesty International local group in Montreal. Finally, the conference will end with a 20-minute Q&A. All the speakers will be present, so this is your chance to ask anything that was not addressed in the conference. There will also be a 15-minute break, as Valerie had said before, and this will be sorry. So we would like to remind you that Concordia University has specified that food is not allowed in the auditorium, unfortunately.
So you can go eat during the intermission. You can go get food. There's a lot of cafes around.
Yeah, but unfortunately you can't bring it in. So yeah.
So the conference is scheduled to end at 3:30. We're gonna try as hard as we can. But please do not leave. The most important part of this event is the march that we're organizing at the end. It will start at 3:45. So this is our opportunity to make lots of noise for Vietnam.
Yeah.
Each person who marches on the street of Vietnam today represents one person in Vietnam who cannot do it him or herself. So you are important, and speak loudly and clearly.
We hope you enjoyed the conference and learn how to amplify the truth about Vietnam.
Alors, nous espérons que vous allez profiter de la conférence, vous allez en apprendre beaucoup sur les droits humains au Vietnam et que vous allez apprendre à amplifier la vérité sur le Vietnam.
So, presenting Irwin Cotler, who would like to take the floor.
Merci, Valérie et Cynthia. Je voudrais... OK, yeah. Je voudrais d'abord féliciter Valérie et Cynthia pour leur engagement, pour leur leadership et pour leur fidélité à la liberté, à la démocratie et les droits de la personne. C'est un grand plaisir pour moi d'être ici aujourd'hui et de participer dans la cause commune qui nous rassemble, la cause pour les droits de la personne. Et de cette cause, de cette lutte pour les droits de la personne, of this struggle as being very much our struggle, as being, in the last analysis, the struggle for ourselves, la lutte pour nous-mêmes. Because in what we say, en ce que nous disons est plus important, en ce que nous faisons, in what we do, we make a statement about ourselves as a people. We make a statement about ourselves as people. I want to say that the case and cause of human rights in Vietnam, or I would say rather la lutte pour les droits de la personne en Vietnam, had been at the forefront of my concerns even from the beginning of my involvement as a member of parliament. One of my first interventions in the House as an MP dealt with the issue of human rights in Vietnam. It spoke about la question des prisonniers politiques, l'importance de les libertés fondamentales, la liberté de la religion, la liberté d'expression, la liberté de la religion. I spoke also then about the need to combat discrimination in Vietnam, and indeed of the need to struggle for freedom and democracy for the Vietnamese people as a whole. This characterized my work throughout as an MP. The most comprehensive motions, and they're on the record and they are a matter of public record, the most comprehensive motions I presented on issues of human rights and democracy were resolutions that I presented with respect to the case and cause of human rights and democracy in Vietnam. And I want to pay tribute in particular, not only to those witnesses from Vietnam who appeared before our committee, because interestingly enough, the last hearings, I was able to act as a vice chair of the hearings of our Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on International Human Rights in Vietnam. Our last 3 hearings in which I participated as a member of parliament were hearings on the case and cause of human rights in Vietnam. And so I began my work, j'ai commencé à l'égard de la lutte pour les droits de l'homme avec les droits de la personne des Vietnamiens. Et j'ai conclu mon engagement à la même sujet. Et ce que je veux dire aujourd'hui, c'est particulièrement important d'avoir l'engagement des jeunes, d'avoir l'engagement des jeunes à la tête d'un mouvement pour les droits de la personne. D'avoir l'engagement des jeunes pour un cri de cœur, pour un mouvement pour les droits de la personne et pour un mouvement démocratie. Et je veux conclure avec les mots que la lutte pour les droits de la personne, comme j'ai dit, c'est la lutte pour nous-mêmes. Et de ce que nous allons faire est plus important, de ce que nous allons dire et faire. Ça peut avoir une importance pour le peuple vietnamien à Vietnam. Et ce qui est très important, c'est pour le peuple vietnamien de comprendre, to understand that they are not alone. Que nous marchons en solidarité avec le peuple vietnamien. That we will continue our struggle until the people of Vietnam are free, can give expression, as you saw in the beginning here. Young Canadians can engage in art, can engage in speech, can engage in expression, and can be celebrated for it. Young people in Vietnam engaging in the same art, in the same speech, in the same expression, run the risk of being imprisoned and being brutalized in prison. We have to ensure that the rights that are available to Canadians in Canada are available to Vietnamese in Vietnam. Merci.
And Minh Thu Quach will now come up to close the opening remarks with a few thoughts of her own.
Nous invitons Madame Minh Thu Quach à venir terminer le mot de bienvenue.
Alors, bonjour, hi, xin chào quý vị. Merci infiniment aux 2 organisatrices. En fait, au comité organisateur, on a ici Valérie Fan et Cynthia Machado, qui sont les 2 figures de proue, mais il y a eu toute une bande de jeunes qui nous ont accueillis ce matin, ce midi plutôt, et c'est admirable de voir que ça vient des jeunes, souvent dans des événements d'envergure comme ceci. Je suis une des plus jeunes et pas aujourd'hui, alors je suis vraiment fière en tant que porte-parole jeunesse de voir que les jeunes se mobilisent pour des causes pacifiques, pour des causes aussi très positives qui peuvent disperser l'espoir à travers le monde et dans le cas précis aujourd'hui au Vietnam. Alors, il me fait très plaisir d'être ici. C'est un honneur pour moi de succéder à l'honorable Irwin Cotler, que j'admire énormément aussi pour tout le travail qu'il a accompli pour la cause des droits humains pour les Vietnamiens. Alors, merci infiniment, M. Cotler. Ça vaut aussi... Et je trouve ça très important d'être là aujourd'hui parce que je suis une fille de réfugiés vietnamiens. C'est grâce à mes parents qui ont eu le courage de fuir le Vietnam après la guerre du Vietnam, après l'entrée des communistes. Ils ont eu le courage de quitter, de risquer leur vie, de risquer la vie de leurs enfants pour avoir justement offrir le meilleur d'eux-mêmes, le meilleur pour leurs enfants, pour leur avenir. Et donc, je me sens un devoir à chaque événement à chaque fois que je le peux, de prendre la parole, de dénoncer les violations de droits humains au Vietnam, de contribuer autant que je peux pour faire avancer la cause des droits humains. C'est sûr, partout à travers la planète pour la justice sociale, mais également pour le Vietnam, étant donné que mes racines sont vietnamiennes. J'ai appris beaucoup en tant que députée depuis 6 ans. J'ai appris beaucoup au courant de cette expérience auprès des plus âgés qui sont à plusieurs reprises venus cogner à ma porte parce que je suis aussi la porte-parole pour le comité Vietnam-Canada et on est plusieurs là-dessus. Il y a d'ailleurs le sénateur Nho aussi qui va être représenté aujourd'hui. Mais il y a plusieurs autres députés et à travers ce comité-là, on réussit aussi à faire en sorte que de pouvoir sensibiliser, d'amener des dossiers comme des violations de droits humains, comme vous allez en entendre parler tout à l'heure, de la catastrophe de Formosa au Vietnam. Donc, c'est très important pour moi de pouvoir recevoir l'information. Il y a des journalistes qui envoient de l'information, il y a des citoyens qui envoient de l'information, il y a des gens qui sont impliqués à travers des mouvements comme Vietnamplify. Donc, c'est pas un travail d'une personne, c'est pas le travail de Minh Thu Quach. C'est sûr que présentement, je suis la seule députée vietnamienne au Parlement. Il y en a eu 2 autres avant moi, mais ça prend d'autres personnes, ça prend des gens comme vous qui sont impliqués. We need a lot more of people, not only people like me that are member of parliament, but we need advocates like you. You are people who will be involved, like today, in a movement to denounce the violations of human rights. And we need you. Myself, I'm only one person. I have only one voice, even if I represent people. I need you. We need to work all together to make things better. So, à travers les années, j'ai pu travailler avec les gens pour rédiger des lettres aux ministres des Affaires étrangères, aux multiples ministres qui se sont succédés depuis les 6 dernières années. Il y a eu des rencontres avec une ressortissante du Vietnam qui était la conjointe d'un prisonnier politique. Il y a plusieurs actions qu'on peut mener. Il y a eu dernièrement au Parlement la première journée d'action pour les droits humains, de défense des droits humains, de la défense des droits humains. Et c'était aussi une première pour les Vietnamiens. Alors, je suis fière d'être vietnamienne, je suis fière de mes origines parce que je vois que les Vietnamiens se mobilisent de plus en plus pour faire en sorte qu'on puisse mettre au jour toutes les violations qui ont lieu, mais aussi toutes les améliorations des conditions humaines qui vont avoir lieu, qui vont se tenir. Et ça, c'est vraiment admirable de la part des Vietnamiens. Après tout ce que les Vietnamiens ont subi, il y a encore du positif qui en ressort et ça, c'est merveilleux. Alors, tout le monde devrait s'applaudir parce que vous faites partie de ces gens qui s'impliquent encore, qui croient encore en une démocratie possible au Vietnam, en la libéralisation des droits. Donc, on ne dira jamais assez à quel point c'est important de s'impliquer, d'essayer de convaincre les autres. Et il y a plusieurs façons de faire. Les gens me demandent, oui, mais qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire? Nous, on est petits, mais c'est en se rassemblant, on peut déposer des pétitions à la Chambre des communes. Je peux faire, dès que j'ai 25 signatures, dès qu'en fait, n'importe quel député a 25 signatures sur une feuille de citoyens canadiens, on peut déposer une pétition à la Chambre des communes et exiger du ministre qui est responsable, soit de la condition des droits humains, soit des affaires étrangères. Donc, on peut exiger une réponse à l'intérieur de 45 jours ouvrables. La même chose si on écrit des lettres, on appelle ça des order of paper, des lettres au ministre, ça prend aussi une réponse du ministre. J'envoie des lettres à l'ambassadeur du Vietnam au Canada également. Et il y a des questions. Donc, si les gens m'envoient des informations pour que je sois au courant de ce qui se passe au Vietnam ou de ce qui se passe au Canada, donc, moi, je peux relayer cette information-là soit aux journalistes, soit à la période des questions qui se passe à tous les jours et qui est très médiatisée. Utilisez ces outils-là et si jamais vous avez des questions, posez-les moi et je pourrai vous aiguiller, mais gênez-vous pas pour intervenir auprès de vos députés. Just be sure that if you want to have an influence, you have to use the tools that are at our disposition. So you can ask your member of parliament to table a petition for you in the House of Commons. As long as we have 25 signatures on the petition, we can ask the minister who is related to the issue in the petition to answer in 45 days. It's the same with a letter on the order of paper. It's the same if we ask a question in the House, you will have an answer. Sometimes you can wait for long, but c'est le propre des luttes sociales. On doit être patient pour voir des transformations au niveau des mentalités et des façons de faire, mais il y a de l'espoir. Donc, get more young Canadians, especially young Vietnamese Canadians, involved in those discussions and events are really useful for the cause. And we are there to have a lot more information. So they talked about education. We have to educate people here too. Not a lot of people, not all people, even all Vietnamese know what is happening in Vietnam. Even if I'm an MP, I didn't know exactly what happened for the Formosa company, the spill in Vietnam, until someone told me, okay, this is happening, what can you do? What can we do together to ask the government not to imprison 100 people who were just in the streets? So, c'est avec vous tous, donc merci de votre implication, merci de faire preuve d'empathie d'abord, de faire preuve d'amour aussi, et de vouloir faire partie de la solution pour faire en sorte qu'on puisse améliorer le sort et la qualité de vie des gens au Vietnam, mais partout à travers le monde. Et c'est en sensibilisant les gens de cette façon, de façon pacifique, de façon diplomatique aussi, qu'on va finir par y arriver. Et surtout dans le contexte actuel des manifestations un peu plus radicales, je pense que ce que l'événement se veut aujourd'hui, c'est vraiment quelque chose de très positif et de très harmonieux. Alors, merci pour tout votre courage. Thank you for being here, getting involved, and to spread the word. Merci, Vietnamplify.
So, presenting Frederic Vauban and Ilang Ta, who will give an overview of the human rights situation in Vietnam. They have both worked under Senator No on the human rights situation in Vietnam annual report.
Donc, pour présenter la situation des droits humains au Vietnam, nous avons Frederic Vauban et Ilang Ta qui ont tous les deux travaillé sur le rapport annuel du sénateur Ngo à la situation des droits de la personne. Donc, accueillons-les chaleureusement.
Kamanquivi, Adai Homnai, thank you all for being here today. When we say violations of human rights, we don't immediately think of Vietnam. We think of Syria, we think of Yemen, we think of North Korea, or even Somalia, but not Vietnam. We all agree human rights should be a fundamental right ensured to all citizens of the world, and everyone should have the right to express their belief and their opinion. This year, the World Bank published a report praising Vietnam's economic growth. Infrastructure and social services policies have improved the lifestyle of many Vietnamese. In reality, this is an illusion of improvement and progress that hides many problems, including repression of dissidents, repression of minorities, physical and mental intimidations, house arrests, violence. Don't you think those actions can be called human rights violations? Everyone has heard about the Vietnam War. But not everyone knows about the labor camps implemented by the one-party state. Between 1 and 2 million Vietnamese were in prison. Labor camps forced obedience and loyalty to the government in power. Many died of hunger, physical, and mental abuse. People fled after the war. For those who could not escape, the civil rights worsened as the judicial system became more and more repressive.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hi everyone. We define human rights in these simple terms. Rights are the basic conditions of a human being's good life, which are recognized as such by the legal code of the state. If we say it negatively, it would be rights are those opportunities, the absence of which deprives the human being of something essential. With that being said, we cannot have rights if we do not have liberty. Without liberty, there is no protection for human rights. Right now, there are many human rights violations in Vietnam. Human rights in Vietnam have long been a matter of much controversy between the government of Vietnam, some international human rights organizations, and Western governments. It is undisputed that the government of Vietnam actively fails to address or take action on its current situation involving those violations. Under its current constitution, the Communist Party of Vietnam is the only one allowed to rule, and as you can, in their constitution, Article 4.1 says, the Communist Party of Vietnam is the leading force of the state and society. In Vietnam, there can only be one political party, which is the Communist Party. The Communist Party controls the nomination of leaders. Therefore, it prevents Vietnamese citizens from choosing their leader of choice. The best way to involve human rights and to protect them will be to have numerous political parties take position and engage in the discussion. We all agree that a government should abide by its laws. However, it is not the case in Vietnam. The state of Vietnam governs by rule of law, which means that it denies constitutional rights at will and manipulates the law in order to meet their objectives. They control the judicial system by creating very broad laws, which are often used to punish those that oppose them. Vietnam's legal system is based on civil law. Its legal system does not follow legal precedents. Without the law of precedents, there is no consistency in court rulings, and the outcomes vary for each specific case. As an example, this year, Phan Minh Hoang, a 52-year-old Vietnamese French blogger, was stripped of his Vietnamese nationality and was expelled to France after he was arrested for political writing and activism. This is the first time in history that Vietnam has used that measure to punish dissidents. Not only is there no consistency in court rulings, the Vietnamese Communist Party controls the administration of the courts and actively violate essential rights. This happened in the case of Doan Huy Chun, a union leader and labor activist. He was arrested for having peacefully organized garment workers. He was denied a lawyer during the closed-door trial and prevented from speaking in his own defense during the proceedings. He was sentenced to between 7 and 9 years in prison in 2007. Father Thaddeus Nguyen Van Ly has also been a victim of manipulated trials. He is a 65-year-old Catholic priest and a prominent human rights activist. He was tried for having joined a pro-democracy movement. During his trial, he was immediately held silent with a hand over its mouth by the security officer behind him. Unlike our criminal code, where crimes are defined by case laws and precedents, their penal code is too vague when it comes to defining a crime. The government of Vietnam uses their own interpretation only to punish whoever speaks up against them. For example, Vietnam considers any criticism or opposition to the government to be a national security matter. As you can see, Vietnam often uses Article 79 of the Penal Code to take matters into their own hands. Recently, there has been a revision of the penal code that holds lawyers criminally responsible for not reporting clients to the authorities for a number of supposed crimes they have committed. Among those crimes, criticizing or opposing the government is considered to be a national security matter in which severe criminal penalties await. The reality is that prisoners of conscience are often forced to endure manipulated trials, long detention and solitary confinement, intimidation, and torture in prison. So far, Vietnam has released over 18,000 prisoners who had been convicted of crimes such as murder, drug and human trafficking, and bribery, and yet no political prisoners have been released.
Right now, as I speak, somewhere in Vietnam, someone's house is being searched with no warning, no warrant. Someone is being persecuted, jailed, or placed under house arrest with no formal charges. Someone is being beaten by the police or tortured by thugs. The grassroots activists, the bloggers, live in constant fear. Every day they face harassment, intimidation, physical assault, and risk of imprisonment. However, with the rise of social medias, more and more bloggers and activists are denouncing and criticizing those violations of human rights. I have a question for you all. Out of 180 countries, where do you think Vietnam is ranked concerning freedom of the press? 25, 155, 175? 175, not far behind Somalia or North Korea. Not the best as a model of improvement, right? The Vietnamese government maintains a tight control on all media support: TV, radio, newspapers, internet. All mass medias belong or are influenced by the government. Vietnam Post and Telecommunication, Vietel, FPT Telecom are all controlled by the one-party state. This structure sadly allows a system of state propaganda. The government gives to the representative of the press official news to be reported and published. Any political sensitive events that occur are kept from the population. There are unwritten rules. Editor-in-chiefs, senior journalists, consultants are all party members of the Communist Party. Those who have press cards are not recognized and not considered officially as journalists. And even approved journalists are not safe against state-sponsored violence. On February 15th of this year, the journalist Lu Ngoc Tan was physically assaulted by thugs and suffered severe brain trauma. His family refused to raise the case in public due to police pressure. All news reports concerning this incident were censored on all media platforms. Vietnam has the highest internet growth rate in Southeast Asia. With a population of 19 million people and 35 million social media users, the government is afraid of an uncontrollable environment where people can freely express their criticism of the government. Similar to the press, all internet providers are state-owned. In 2015, the government amended Article 117 of the Penal Code with a clause that can be loosely interpreted as punishing dissenters who have yet to commit a crime with a sentence duration ranging from 1 to 5 years of imprisonment. The government also created what we call the Green Dam, which is a software similar to the Chinese Great Firewall. This means retailers are forced to install the software on every computer that they sell. This has severe consequences. For example, Facebook, Yahoo 360 has been selectively blocked, knocked offline when inappropriate information was published, making Vietnam a black hole of internet users. Also, cyber troops operate on the internet as online pro-governmental soldiers, publishing mass articles favoring the one-party state government, intimidating dissidents' voices, bloggers, human rights activists, and intruding on net citizens' privacy. Bloggers are targeted by the actual government. In the past 4 months, 8 pro-democratic bloggers were imprisoned. 2 are currently being hunted down. Unsurprisingly, Vietnam has ranked as the second worst country in the world for internet users. I would like to now call 2 of those victims to your attention. Nguyen Van Dai, 2017 Human Rights Award recipient. He was charged under Article 88 for conducting propaganda against the state. His office was shut down and hasn't seen his family since. He's awaiting trial, facing 20 years of imprisonment. Han Huang Yik Tuk, a blogger and creator of an internet provider, EIS, was accused of attempting to overthrow the government, a social economic post criticizing the state. He's also awaiting trial and facing 16 years of imprisonment. I would like to recognize also other bloggers currently in prison for expressing their opinion.
Vietnam has recently violated the freedom of speech of Mother Mushroom. Who is she? Her name is Nguyen Ngoc Quinn. She is a 37-year-old blogger whose nickname originated from the nickname Mushroom that she gave to her daughter. She runs a blog which is critical of the government and covers issues such as land confiscation, freedom of speech, and police brutality. She has been sentenced to 10 years in prison under Article 88 of the Penal Code by the country's authorities on June 29th of 2017. She's famous for her quote, "Who will speak if you don't?" She voiced support for fellow dissidents and publicly campaigned for the release of many political prisoners. In September 2009, the police took Mother Mushroom from her home in the middle of the night and questioned her about her blog posts that criticized government policies on China. She was released after 9 days, but the police intimidated her and harassed her. She was put under house arrest on numerous occasions to prevent her from attending important events. The police reportedly said that in addition to her Facebook and blog posts, other supposed crimes she committed included giving interviews to CNN and Radio Free Asia. The Communist Party has also actively silenced Chan Tinga, who is part of a growing community of Vietnamese rights bloggers and activists who use Facebook and YouTube to voice criticism, share updates about prisoners of conscience, and support one another in their struggles for political freedom. She was arrested on January 21 under 88 of the Penal Code. She was recently sentenced to 9 years in prison and 5 years probation on a charge of conducting propaganda against the state on July 27, 2017. Would you also believe me if I told you that not only is freedom of expression not respected, but freedom of assembly too? The state of Vietnam considers peaceful assemblies to be inciting public disorder when it is not led by public offices or state-operated organizations. They also consider it to be carrying out activities aimed at overthrowing the government. As a result, assemblies are often dispersed within minutes because of police interventions. Protesters are brought into interrogating rooms and are detained. Others will be sent to social rehabilitation centers. Police interventions often end in bloodshed by uniformed and plainclothes police. The police are given absolute power to use sticks, tear gas, bangers, and crackers to attack the petitioners. The victims of these attacks include the elderly and children. Not only does the government actively crack down on assemblies, state-owned media and cyber troops launch massive campaigns of defamation against protesters who simply exercise their right to freedom of expression. The most concrete example would be in the recent event that happened in 2016, where there has been a marine life disaster which resulted in water pollution. Fish carcasses were reported to have washed up on the beaches. Formosa denied responsibility after discharging illegal toxic waste in drainage pipes. Vietnam has remained inactive in their investigation. Not only has the Vietnamese government been inactive, they have cracked down peaceful protests and civic action from affected fishermen, including arresting Nguyen Van Hoa, a citizen journalist who covered the Formosa protests. Nguyen Van Hoa was charged for abusing democratic freedoms under Article 258 of the Vietnamese Penal Code. When we think of freedom of religion, we think of the right to express our religion or faith. Freedom of religion is guaranteed by the Vietnamese Constitution under Article 24, and yet the Vietnamese government have been inconsistent with its policies on faith and its treatment of religious groups. The state strictly controls and oversees the religious activities and its involvement in the religious lives of the citizens, especially unregistered groups that have been deemed to be a threat to national security. And the groups that are usually targeted are the Montagnard, Cao Dai, and Hoa Hao. Why? Because the religious practice has a political component that promotes democracy and human rights. Recently, Vietnam has drafted a law with the objective of improving the situation on freedom of religion, but international organizations such as Amnesty International deem that the wording is ambiguous and could not effectively protect religious freedom. The police has recently attacked Vietnamese Catholics on 28 June 2017. The Catholic group attempted to defend a cross they had put up on land claimed by their church. The police threw stones at them and beat around 4 of them. There are many victims of repression of freedom of religion. Among them are Nguyen Van Lia, who is a Hoa Hao teacher. He was jailed because he assisted the funeral of one of the advocates of Hoa Hao, and while in prison, he was denied access to any medical treatment for his blood pressure. He has gone almost completely deaf because of the routine beatings. Another victim would be Nguyen Con Chin. He is a pastor and was jailed because of his religious activities as the director of Vietnam-U.S. Lutheran Alliance Church, and their activities were considered anti-government and anti-communist by the authorities. During his trial, the pastor was denied a lawyer and was not allowed to speak in his own defense. Mrs. Chan, his spouse, was also arrested and tortured for engaging in activities that promote freedom of religion. So I would like to thank you for being here and having listened to our presentation. We would like to draw your attention to a video that shows you the current situation of Vietnam's current oppression on activists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chào các bạn, tôi là Nguyễn Văn Thạch, hiện đang ngồi ở đồn công an quận Ngũ Hành Sơn, thành phố Đà Nẵng.
Activists in Vietnam face retaliation for their activities. And in recent years, we've seen a rise in the number of people who are being physically attacked by groups of thugs who appear to work in connivance with the police. The sort of activists that are being attacked include land rights activists, people who are environmental activists, people who are religious freedom activists. It's a wide gamut. One should remember that this is a one-party state where expression and activities are controlled by the government, and the internet provides the only outlet for activists to be able to say what's happening, to describe the injuries they've gotten, and to demand that the international community pressure Vietnam to stop the attacks.
Bốn thằng. Các bạn có biết không, 4 thằng thanh niên, 4 thằng như con trâu. Nó chặn xe lại, nó nắm cổ mình, nó quăng xuống đất. đánh vô mặt, đánh mình bất tỉnh. Họ thường đánh tập trung vào phần mang tai, thái dương, đầu, xương sườn, xương sống và phần phổi.
When activists report attacks to the police, very little happens. There are hardly any investigations. There are hardly any consequences for the thugs who perpetrate the attacks. In many cases, people believe that the thugs are probably working with the police. In fact, what we've seen is when attacks take place where officials are nearby or are actually present, after the attackers are finished, the people who get arrested are the victims, the activists, who then get detained, taken in for interrogation. In some cases, they're charged with crimes as well.
Trên từ 20 mét đến từ chỗ tôi đứng đến cổng công an là 20 mét là tôi nhận là mình đánh đập người vô cớ của các lực lượng an ninh hoặc thường phục.
Several years ago, Vietnam realized that their human rights record was being judged on the basis of the number of arrests and the number of political prisoners. They realized that they were being targeted by the international community based on that assessment, based on numbers. And so I think what they've changed is their tactics. In a number of cases, the arrests are still occurring, and we do see people still going to court. But in other cases, we're seeing more and more of these thuggish attacks, which the government denies involvement in.
Donc, merci beaucoup Frédéric et Ilan pour cette description de la situation des droits humains au Vietnam. Donc, merci beaucoup pour la recherche aussi.
So coming all the way from Toronto, we are happy to welcome Dan Chi Hung, former Vietnamese prisoner of conscience, who will tell us his story. Dan Chi Hung's first language is Vietnamese, but he will try his best to communicate in English. Mary Tran will present as mediator for this section.
Donc maintenant nous aurons le témoignage de M. Dan Chi Hung, qui est un ancien prisonnier de conscience. Il vient de Toronto, sa langue maternelle est le vietnamien. Il va nous parler en anglais aujourd'hui. Il va donc parler en anglais pour nous aujourd'hui. Et pour animer le témoignage, nous avons Nha Uyên Chang, qui va être sa médiatrice.
Hi, hello everybody. My name is Marie, and this is Dan Chi Hung.
Bonjour, good afternoon. Kính chào quý vị.
So basically today we're here because we've seen the first part where we were very well explained how in Canada human rights works, how we're so blessed with a legal system that works, that has legal precedents and everything. This side of this presentation, we have a testimonial from an ex-prisoner in Vietnam. Actually, he will tell us that he was in prison more than once, so that's a lot of experience to share with us today. And I just wanted to invite you guys to hear his story, and because this will take approximately 20 to 30 minutes, is it okay if we sit? Could you allow us to sit? Thank you so much. Xin mời ngồi.
Kính chào quý vị. Hi everybody. You can sit.
Oh, thank you.
Before I sit, I want to tell something with everybody. The first table, my first language is a Vietnamese language, and I'm newcomer in Canada, only 2 years and 10 months. That's why my English, my voice, not very well. But I try, because if we don't try, we cannot do anything. The second thing, you see my scarf? My scarf is symbol of the Vietnamese flag for the Vietnamese refugee people live in Canada, in USA, and every country in the world. And I respect that. And today I wear for remember about my country, about everybody in Vietnam now have the controlled by Vietnamese government. They don't have freedom. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're here today, and the first thing that I think that I want you to share with me as well, and then with the audience as well, is I was told that you were born in Vietnam in the communist system and government. Why did you become an enemy when you were born there? How did that happen?
I was born in a member, a family. My family, a lot of people is a member of Communist Party, and they kept some very important position in Vietnamese government, like the education system, military, or communist police. However, I recognize the nature of the Communist Party and become the enemy of the Communist Party because I have some reason here. The first of all, I like that Ho Chi Minh. He is leader of Communist Party. He's not talented, but the Communist Party told with everybody he's talented. He's liar.
So basically, what I understand is that in your family, in your immediate family members, a lot of them hold important positions in the government. So they're communist.
Yeah.
And even that, with that such a strong influence, you still recognize that the nature of the Communist Party is not good.
Yeah.
And the first reason that you're telling us is
he is not talented, but the Vietnamese government told he's talented. Just why he's liar, and I don't want to share this idea with everybody. I want to just about Ho Chi Minh, you know.
So you want to tell people the truth about Ho Chi Minh, that you don't think that he's talented as his party claims him to be.
Yeah. And also, my country very poor. Everybody know about my country. If the government of the Vietnam, they're running well with my country not poor. And everybody want to live in my country. And you know, after 1975, a lot of most people supporting my idea, supporting my statement. And however, I realize that who in the world have few countries is communist control, like North Korea and Vietnam. Every country is very poor and no freedom. And I think my country is the same problem.
Yeah, so I understand what you say. You're basically saying that if the government is doing such a great job as they claim they're doing, why is Vietnam so poor? And why are all the communist countries around the world are still so poor?
And also, I found the communism is paranoid, not true for human rights, not really for people. Because, you know, because not based on humanity. They make very, very paranoid communism.
So basically, it just makes people, they rule by fear, right? They make people scared. That's why they can control them. They don't let people free so that they can have ideas. They don't respect the human rights. And just to relate to that is that it's so amazing to me that even in such, even in your family, immediate family with like the communist government, you're still able to recognize these things. How did you come about to recognize that all these things were not good when you live in Vietnam, when your family members that you grew up with are all communists?
Okay, I understand your idea. And one more thing I want to tell. When I enter the Hanoi University of Technology, because I'm not political, and also I'm not a writer, I'm not a blogger, but when I study in Hanoi University of Technology, I have the time to go to library for research some document because I want to know why my country very poor. Nobody can speak anything. And I go to library. I look at some memoir, some article, some newspaper, some history document from the Vietnam, from Russian, from the Chinese, from another country like Poland and Ukraine. And I found the just criminal of the Vietnamese government. And Ho Chi Minh and Vietnamese government kill a lot of people. They do not have the freedom for Vietnam. Yes, that's why I become the enemy of my country, of the Vietnamese government. And also, when I look at the society, you know, nobody can speak. Nobody can writing something about bad thing of the government. That's why I become the enemy of the Vietnamese government.
Because you spoke up.
Yeah.
You spoke up when you were not supposed to. You spoke up.
Yeah.
I think that's why people say that knowledge is power. Basically, you went to university, and when you were studying engineering, you were studying something completely different from like politics. And you went to the library. You were able to research so much, and you learned so much more than you expected to learn. You learned all about the crimes that were happening in Vietnam. And that's when you decided that you were the voice that they needed. And you spoke up. That's why they didn't like him and put him to jail.
Yeah, because I think if only myself talk about abuse, violence, no human rights in Vietnam, the government in Vietnam and stop my mouth. Also, 100 people like me, the government easier for stop the mouth. 1,000 people, the same problem. But everybody in the Vietnam is Vietnamese people. Everybody talking know about the Vietnamese issue. They grew, they stand up, and the Vietnamese government cannot do something for stop the mouth. Yeah.
So I think that's the reason why we're here today, is because in Vietnam, they don't have freedom of speech. So if one person speak or 100% speak, the government has the power to shut their mouth. However, in Canada, where freedom of speech is recognized as human rights, we can be their voice. They can't speak, but we're the one that can voice that all these injustice and what we're seeing, so that we can be the voice. We can say what they cannot say within their own country.
Exactly. Yeah. What did I say? Yeah.
I'm glad you agree with that.
Sorry. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah.
So leading on to the second question that I have for you, can you share with us your experience in jail? And well, now that we know a little bit why you became an enemy of the government, the communist government, can you let us, the audience, know how many times you were in jail and how was that experience?
Oh, I have 3 times in prison, 2 times in Vietnam, and 1 time in Thailand. 2 times in Vietnam, I was in prison in 2006 and 2007 because I write some article public in internet so about the criminal of the Vietnam government. And also I write something about the corrupt of the Vietnam government. And after that, I and some friends, we are meeting in the street. Again, the Chinese communist government killed the fishermen in the Vietnamese Ocean. And Vietnamese government, they sell the land and ocean to the to Chinese government. They don't want Vietnamese people against the Chinese communist government. And we are protest, and we against the communist Chinese government, and Vietnamese government use police for arrest somebody, go to prison with me, and I have 10 friends the first time. But the first time I have only 1 week in prison because my family, they as communist party member, and the sponsorship for me get out of prison. After 2007, I have 3 weeks in prison too because of the same problem with the Vietnamese government. And the second time, my family deal with the Vietnamese government. They deal, if I get out of prison, I stop writing, stop talking about human rights, about abuse, about the violence in the Vietnam. My family want to protect me. They want to control me. But when I get out, I say, no, I continue. Because I want to sacrifice myself for my country, for Vietnamese people. And I continue the writing. After that, I escaped the Vietnamese government. They saw I continue writing and public in some book. Here's a first of a book. I have a lot of books write about the Vietnamese criminal. And some book have in the Toronto Public Library in some country. And the Vietnamese government, they doesn't like that. They want to stop my mouth. They send letter to police and most wanted me. I escaped from the Hanoi, the capital of the Vietnam, to South Vietnam, to Saigon. After that, I get out to Cambodia, and after go to Thailand. I want to go to Malaysia for working with the worker. Because I'm working for one, organization for protect the worker. But when I came to Thailand, Vietnamese government still sent letter to Interpol of Thailand, and they arrest me the first time, and they want to bring me back to Vietnam, and I get 10 months in prison in Thailand before I came to Canada, sponsored by Canada government and even Russia.
So I can really, yes, definitely a big hand of applause for that. Thank you.
And I want to talk about my experience. In Vietnam, 2 times in prison. You know, nobody live in prison. All the way you see darkness. All the way it's nighttime, not daytime. You see darkness and nothing. But when I live in Thailand, a little bit easier. I live with somebody from Montana. They are refugee, and I help them to make a document to the UNHCR. And now somebody disaster in the Kitchener, Ontario, by Canada government.
So even in prison, he was still continuing to help people. When he was in Thailand, the prisoner was there. You helped them with, because you were able to put the documents together, to write in English and to present, to redo their documents for them.
Yeah.
And then you were able to help them get their visa application, is that?
Yeah, for refugee certificate.
For a refugee certificate. And that person is now in Kitchener, Canada. So a big, oh, I'm sorry, where was that?
They are Montana.
Montana.
Yeah, they're refugee too.
Oh, wow.
And you know, in prison, I take some children for English, for Vietnamese language too. And also, you know, optimism, very important, because you don't know about the future. I always sing a song. I looking a bird. I take the people. That's why I always happy. And the last thing, I think if I die for my country free, I'm satisfied. And I love my life, but I love my country first. If everybody in Vietnam have freedom, I die, I always happy. No problem. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that's not everybody can say that, and I think it's so amazing that you can be so confident into sharing your story. And I think that like what I like the most, the lesson that I learned a lot is also always to be hopeful, to be optimistic. Like you said, when you were in prison, then you were listening to the birds, just that hopeful, because you cannot know about the future. But if you are hopeful, that's what got you through. And then just the thought that and what's even more amazing is that the thought that you have, if you're by yourself and you're the only one suffering, it's okay if it's for your country.
Exactly. I want to sacrifice for my country, for everybody. Vietnam, miss people. They cannot talk anything. Now I'm stay here for talking. I'm continue writing something in the Facebook. Also, I continue publish something in the internet. I write book, and also I'm working hard for build up my life. And also I continue contact with the Canada government for talk about human rights in the Vietnam. And last year I go to House Common. No, 2015. I came to the House Common for tell you something about the just human rights, violent abuse in Vietnam. It's my everything I do for Vietnam, for my country. Yeah.
One thing that I wanted the audience to know is that we all know you through your pen name, Đặng Chí Hùng, but that's not your real name. But Đặng Chí Hùng is the name that you go by, and then with all this stories that you write, the books that you write about.
Oh, I want to share a little bit thing about my pen name. My real name is Hang. It's my first name. My family is a farm, and if you check internet, you know my real name is Phạm Anh Hồng, but I choose Đặng Chí Hùng because it's that I have an idol. He's Đặng Chí Bình. He not define my family, but he's my idol. He is the former spider of the South of Vietnam. The South of Vietnam army sent him to the North of Vietnam. After North of Vietnam is the Vietnamese communist, arrested him to prison, and he got 18 years in prison, and very, very difficult for his life. And after that, he came to America for resettlement, and he wrote a book called Black Steel. I read the four of Black Steel, and I love this book, and I understand him. And last week, he came from Boston to Toronto, and I bring him to Ottawa and go around Canada. And I met him the first time. Before, when I use his pen name, I write an email for him and ask him, "You agree with me? Use my pen name like your pen name?" And he say, "Yes, okay." And that's why a lot of people know my pen name, Đặng Chí Hùng, not my real name. But I'm happy with my pen name. Yeah.
I think the next question that I have for you is, we know that your experience that you were jailed, as you said, that because the government was not happy with you organizing all these protests, even if they were like peaceful. And the reason why you organize these protests with the groups of people is that you don't agree with them. And can you give us specific examples of why you don't agree with them and how corrupted the Vietnamese government is? How are they violating human rights? As for your own experience, we actually heard the PowerPoint, the presentation. We have numbers, but for a testimonial perspective and a witness perspective, can you share that experience with us?
The story of corrupt in Vietnam, we have a lot of examples, but I can take one example, new example. I think 1 month ago, if the Vietnamese people, you can search in the Google in one article from the Vietnam. One guy, he is a director of provincial environment. It's in by provide, small province, but he has a build a villa like a castle. They estimate the castle of his, like they need to spend at least $10 million. But you know, but basic salary of this guy only 8 million Vietnam dong, equivalent $400 per month.
So so the director is someone that it was working in so the director is from the government. So it's a government officer.
But he is small officer.
Okay, and then he has a small salary of $400 per month.
And his wife did nothing.
And his wife did not work, and they were able to build a 10 million US villa.
For villa.
And how did that happen?
I don't know. Because you know, you don't know. I don't know. How about income? Do you believe that his salary for building a villa is not just for one example? The second example, a few years ago, we can see a newspaper, the Vietnamese government, show that the Prime Minister of the Vietnam is Nguyễn Tân Dũng. And basically for every Prime Minister in the Vietnam, They have basic salary only $800 US dollar per month. But why they have the luxurious life? They have a lot of power. They send
their children
to another country for study, and they pay for themselves.
It's very expensive to be an international student.
Do you believe it's true money? No. This money corrupt from the people, for sure. And the second thing, in the Vietnam, a lot of example about abuse or violence. Because we heard from the article of Senator Ngô, we know, but I have one more example. You know about blogger Tạ Phong Tần? Now he resides in America. She's the former lieutenant of the police of Vietnam. But a few years ago, she tried to write something about abuse, corrupt in Vietnam. And they arrested her to prison. They get her 15 years, after down to 10 years in prison. And 2015, she arrived to America because the American government sponsored she to America. But in Vietnam, when you write something about corruption, you write something about abuse or violence, so you need to get in the 88 or 258 crime code. Also,
so you can be arrested under these codes.
Yeah, and also, if you talk something about bad thing of government, the police can kill you. Yeah, one example, a news article, we can see the Nguyễn Hữu Tấn. He talked about freedom for journalists and also freedom for Vietnam. When police arrest him to prison, no, not prison, but police station. After one day, he dead by cut. Yeah. You can search in the internet very easy, and Human Rights Watch know about this article and everything I choose in the Vietnam. We can talk about bad thing about government. The police, the government can kill you, arrest you, go to prison, and you become, a people, not do nothing.
And for your personal story, I wanted to ask you, how did you get out? How were you able to escape? So we know that the first 2 times when you were in Vietnam, you got out of jail because you were sponsored by your family. But the last time, how did you get out, and why you're here today?
Okay, I want to share my story. When the Thai Interpol police arrested me to come back to Vietnam, because the Vietnamese government want to bring me back to Vietnam, go to jail, because they most wanted me. But when in the car go to the airport, the US government send notification to Thai government, stop, keep me in the Thailand, because I'm refugee. Because the UNHCR and Human Rights Watch wait for me. And after that, I lived 10 months in prison. United Nations, Canada government, Senator Ngô, and BPSOS from Tiến sĩ Nguyễn Đình Thắng for help the refugee people. And also Miss Janet Binland from the Human Rights Watch.
International help does help.
And they help me.
Does make a difference.
Yeah, escape to get out of prison and reset in Canada. And I say to thank you, Canada, because Canada helped me a lot of for get out of prison.
I think that I'm getting cues from Valerie to wrap it up. So we have 2 minutes, but I think that it's important to take these 2 minutes to ask you about the last question: is what can we do to make a difference? I know that you're continuing your work that you started in Vietnam, even though they tried to shut you once, twice, it didn't work, even here. So what can you do? What are you doing, and how can we help you?
If I live in Vietnam, I can very easy for connect with activities and also the Vietnamese people for make something. But now I'm staying in Canada. So far, not Vietnam. But now the social media very easy for connection with everybody. I want the social media give press for Vietnamese government, and we want Vietnamese people know about human rights. It's basic, and also they stand up for protection. And however, I want to make enlistment 1,000 pesos for bring the Vietnamese government to the criminal court. Yeah.
So there's two things that we can do. First of all is because with social media now, it's a new platform. It gives us more power so that we can join this movement and we can voice so that the Vietnamese citizen can know. We can use the social media platform and the tools that are available to us. And the second thing that Mr. Hung is doing is that he's writing a 1,000-page indictment to bring the Vietnamese communist government in front of the international court. So that's the two projects that you're working on, along with other projects.
And also, I want everybody stand with me for speak about human rights in the Vietnam, because I want everybody in the world know about just human rights in Vietnam, not like Vietnamese government say it's liar.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your sharing your story.
Before I left, I want to show with everybody some picture. Here's a picture. So that citizen who were beaten by the Vietnamese Communist police for protesting against Formosa toxic waste spill. The second picture, the person who were arrested for protesting against the Chinese communist killed Vietnamese fishermen on the Vietnamese Ocean. This picture in Ho Chi Minh City. And this picture, here the Vietnamese government is using the police to rob the land of the people. They rob the land and they arrested people. And the people had their land stolen by the government and they became homeless now. In the Vietnam, a lot of people homeless now because the government robbed the land of them. I told you before, this new West people, he's cutting by the police in police station a few months ago. And here's my book. I showed you already. I expose the criminal of Ho Chi Minh and Communist Party of the Vietnam. And this picture, when I live in prison, and Canada government take a picture for me, and now it's my memoir, you know, and my my picture. I'm very like this picture because show me in prison. And some friend lining up to visit me in the Thai jail. And some jailmate in the Thai prison. The photo was taken a day before I arrived in Canada, and some children I sponsored them, and now they live in Kitchener, Ontario. They are Montana refugees. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you.
There will now be a break, 15 minutes, so please be back for 2:05. I would like to remind you to not bring food or drinks into the auditorium as specified by Concordia University.
We would just like to thank Dak Chi Hum and Marie for their amazing job on this testimonial. By the way, I might not have mentioned it, but yeah, Yun Chan is a lawyer too, so she was very sharp on this. Thank you very much.
Water bottle?
Yeah.
TV. Actually, I just want to talk about that event. Okay? Let me set up my camera. I just want to ask you a couple of some questions. For example, Vietnamplify.
Vietnam. So you say,
I really like that name. You know.
So you say Vietnam.
Uh-huh.
Say Vietnam.
Vietnam. Okay. Amplify.
No, Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can write that.
Say just Amplify.
Vietnam.
Amplify. So you just add Amplify.
Okay. Because when I read that Vietnamplify, you know, it sounds great, you know.
Vietnam.
Okay, Vietnamplify. Okay.
Yes.
So basically,
You gonna we need to know this. I think. Sorry, I'm just gonna.
so let's take it. Okay. Mình đang xíu nha ha. So basically, it won't be long, I promise, because I know that you are very busy on that special day, you know. So, and obviously,
Also very hungry. I am like.
I promise. I promise it won't be long.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Some question, for example, that organization you organize it, like you started to like you founded that organization. Okay. Since when?
Yes.
Explain that. Okay. This is the second question.
Yeah.
I'm very bad on names. Your name is Fan. Valerie is Fan. Cynthia. Cynthia is Valerie is Fan and Cynthia. Very Fan. So you are not the one who founded that organization. Movement.
And this movement started to be started with we're a movement, we're not an organization, so we don't say there's a president, everybody.
Can you speak to them? Okay. I just want you to, like, for example, very good, do that. Okay, and then you know, like during the interview, try your best to speak a little bit so that they can recognize that you're good. And after that, you can read your speech, like the rest. If I'm not happy, I cannot what we do today and how to put it. Phong trào okay. Tell me about your organization.
We're not an organization, we're a movement, and we are both here today, but I believe it's a whole crowd of
Organize that event today. You know, around which countries?
Yes, I mean, we wanted to get as much information as possible out. So we had to find
And we also
I really like the name of your group, Vietnamplify, because it tells me a lot of, about your passion, what you want to put in the situation in Vietnam. Think about
yes,
and this is not, and obviously today, that is the first event that you organize. I believe that is not the last one.
yes, so this is our first event that we organized. We had this. To be honest with you, I think that we were not able to think as the first year was so much organization, but we were able to be able to more events. I think that was very important.
Because that is the first event that you organize, and obviously no one else know about your movement. If you have another movement to let people know about, what they need to do, what you're doing.
It was a very strong foundation for I think we're talking about and and we have and we try to make this kind of main instruction more than just giving you what we think is that there's so many amazing right? And I think everybody has their role to play. All obviously, for example, people in the age of Vietnamese, to see more Vietnamese survive. That had a lot to do with it. But so that's the difference. I don't really Vietnamese that much, but I speak something else in here, but I don't really that. And you're right, my voice is the one of the people who I want to
giỏi quá. How old are you? I did remember that I was like when I was 25 in your age, you know, at your age, I was not so, you know, like.
I'm 30. I'm very mature.
Thank you for that again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thầy đi bớt cho con khoảng chừng 2 phút. Thì tôi nói rằng là tôi rất trân trọng, tại vì cái thế hệ của tôi nó lớn hơn hết rồi, và những người mà rất là chơi tiếp mà sẽ là ở đây đó, vâng, là các em hiểu, nếu mà hiểu mà về nhân quyền là một cái thứ gì nữa về Việt Nam là càng hay gì đó. Vâng, thầy trả lời con như vậy, y hệt như vậy trong cái này thôi ha. Mình được. Thầy có muốn con phỏng vấn bằng máy không? Được. Sao? Vâng. Thì con muốn con hỏi con nói cho thầy biết câu hỏi con á. Vâng. Con giỏi quá. Hồi xưa con cũng học master ở đây. Con học tức là hết dạy học. Thầy có lúc thầy có nghỉ hưu chưa? Chứ liệu mà nó nói mà người ta nói cho mình đi hai đứa đó thì nghỉ tôi rồi như vậy. Thầy xin nói là quá kỹ nghệ. Hồi xưa thì con không có học nghề của thầy, thì con thấy nó đáng thôi. Con chỉ có học con chứ con học quá thầy có hỏi gì của họ. Bởi vì tất cả con có 4 phút thôi.
Okay. Hello. Tester ici. Ouais. Ouais. Oui, oui, mais pas du tout.
Ba mươi. Okay.
Donc, nous allons continuer aujourd'hui avec notre présentation du désastre écologique Formosa. PowerPoint. Voilà, donc ce sera la présentation du désastre écologique Formosa qui sera présentée par M. Nguyen Duy Vinh. M. Nguyen Duy Vinh est un ingénieur mécanique en fait qui a été professeur à l'Université Laval pendant 8 ans. 8 ans, pardon. Qu'il a fait beaucoup de recherches au NRT. Voilà, donc, oh, Cynthia. Ouais. She's, yes.
Sorry, yes. So notably, he has published 2 scientific articles on Formosa.
Donc, il a publié 2 articles scientifiques sur le désastre écologique Formosa. Donc, applaudissons-le.
Thank you so much, Valerie and Cynthia. Mr. Irwin Cotler, Madam Quach, Minh Thu, honorable guests. Kính chào các bác và các anh chị. Thân chào các em. You hear me well? Yes? I'm not a specialist on the environmental issues. But since my retirement, I have taken time to be more interested in the Vietnamese issues and in the situation in Vietnam. Vietnam is part of my former country. Tim vẫn còn đập cho Việt Nam. Thì hôm nay I am representing JFFV. JFFV is an organization based in the US, in Austin, called Justice for Formosa Victims. Justice pour les victimes du désastre écologique Formosa. Formosa, vous savez, c'est un très joli nom. It's a beautiful name. It means literally beautiful island. Đảo đẹp. It's a former name of Taiwan. But when Formosa came to Vietnam, it had transformed the people surrounding Formosa Hà Tĩnh Corporation into a nightmare. So from beautiful island, our country has lived through an ugly nightmare. So this is my presentation today is about an overview of what happened to that ecological disaster. So where is located Formosa Hà Tĩnh Steel Corporation? So you can see with the help of Christian and Valerie, we are able to pinpoint where Formosa Hà Tĩnh Steel is located. So you see on the red part, it's a port named Vũng Áng, and that's how it looks like. You can see that on the internet. It's a subsidiary of Formosa Plastic Group, and they are based in Taiwan. They were formed in 2008 to establish a big steel making plant in Hà Tĩnh. They were given 3,300 hectares, which is equivalent of 33 kilometers square. And the investment is about, for that company, of $22 billion US. And they try to produce about 7 to 10 million tons of steel per year. Right now, they are not on the production cycle yet, but they are aiming at producing 7.5 tons by 2017. They are lucky. They got a very good deal with the Vietnamese government. They can stay there for 70 years. And normally, our Vietnamese law does not allow for more than 50 years. So there was a coverage behind somewhere in the Vietnamese government to allow them to have this a very good deal. They don't have a good past history. They were named by the German group Eteco in 2009 with the Black Planet Award. They create a toxic waste in Sihanoukville in 1998, and even today, the waste has not been cleaned yet, and people still having cancer due to that. 2,799 tons of toxic waste created by the Formosa Plastic Group. 2009, 2015 in Taiwan, where they come from, Thai Sea residents complain about cancer, and they are bringing FPG to court. Where the iron ore comes from, that's quite a mystery. Even today, I am not able to clearly or precisely know exactly where the iron ore comes from. We do have iron ore mines in Vietnam, in Thạch Khê, the same province like Hà Tĩnh, where the picture that you saw. Vị Xuyên is in Hà Giang, and Tuyên Quang up north. And they may also import from India, Australia, and China. So you can see daily, Thạch Khê used to produce 350 tons of mineral iron ore per year, but now they seem to have some problems. So we just saw on the internet a few days ago that they may have to stop the Thạch Khê project. So from Vũng Áng to Chân Mây Lăng Cô, Vũng Áng, it means a G. You can see that the beach spans over 250 kilometers from Vũng Áng to Lăng Cô. Lăng Cô is in the Thừa Thiên Huế province. So you have 4 provinces touched by the disaster. First, the April 4th is a very historical date. On that date, fish massively dying on the beach. And for the whole first 3 weeks of April, things happened right after in Quảng Bình, Quảng Trị, and then in Thừa Thiên Huế, Lăng Cô. So a total of around 70 tons of fish have died within 3 weeks. And then we also have local divers who have found a long pipe, undersea pipe, having a diameter of about 1 meter, and in the deep sea of about 17 meters undersea. And the diver later died. He was in touch with the toxin, Monsieur Lê Văn Ngay. And that's what the picture, you can find it everywhere in the internet. That's a real terrible picture. Fish die massively. And all those are pictures that can be found on the internet. From Vũng Áng up to Da Nang recently. Da Nang is a bit far away down south. And during that time, our government officials, they tried to convince the people that nothing happened. The beach still clean. We eat fish, safe. And I was so furious when I saw those pictures. But in reality, they are covering up something. They are covering up because they want to protect Formosa. And right at the beginning, manifestation protests took place in Hanoi, in Ho Chi Minh City, and everywhere in the country. And recently, at the Formosa in 24, in April 2nd, they start already the petition right in Vietnam. And here in Canada, we also organize a few protests in front of the Vietnamese embassy in Ottawa. And then June 28th, a very critical date, Formosa Hà Tĩnh Steel Corporation bowed to the Vietnamese people, recognizing their fault and responsibility. They admitted that 12 cubic meters of toxic waste has been dumped accidentally into the Vietnam Sea. Accidentally. 5 days without power. How can they dump 12 million liters of toxic waste without knowing? They said it's because of the problem of the power outage. So that's very difficult to accept. And then they, along with the Vietnamese government, they set up a compensation deal of $500 million. So if you divide $500 million to about 65,000 fishermen, each one of them will probably receive around $700. What can you do with $700? The sea is dead, no fish to fish. What do you do? Your life. They live there for several generations. It's terrible. And protest start. This one is the biggest one, taken right in front of the Formosa Hà Tĩnh Steel Corporation in Vũng Áng. 10,000 people. 10,000 people, they are not fearful to stand up peacefully. Nothing was broken. There was no violence, except the police take picture and then they follow the manifestants après, and they try to crush some of the protest people. But here, look at how the people are so quiet, and thanks to the leadership of the Vietnamese Catholic priests, that the thousand, as we call it, most of them are Catholic people, and they listen to the priest, and they are not doing anything violent. So this is my a bit of mathematics. So you know how a steel plant works. You have ferrous oxide. Iron ore contains iron, but you want to remove the oxygen. So you have to inject silicon or magnesium or phosphorus to remove the oxygen. So you have more iron. So from 60%, for example, of ferrous oxide, at the end, if you get around 92% of iron, you got what we call steel. So steel is basically high concentrated iron. And then there are three theories that you can find on the internet. The first theory was given by the Vietnamese government. They believe that cyanide, phenol, and iron hydroxide create what they call a mixed cell. And it is transported by what we call in Vietnamese hải lưu, a sea stream transporting all the toxin southward. The second theory comes from an engineer called Minh Thu Quach. He lives in the US, in California. And he took the sample from Lanco, and he found there was a concentration of ammonium very high. So when you have high concentration of ammonium, the pH of the sea becomes very, very low, and the fish die. And the third theory is from Mr. Nguyễn Đức Thắng, a doctor from Hanoi. And he got the leak from the team that surveyed the disaster. And they told him that there's a lot of sulfate de fer, ferrous sulfate, in the toxic waste. And when this sulfate goes to the water, it produces what they call cation ferrous +2. And the cation ferrous +2 love oxygen. It took all the oxygen in the sea, and the fish died. So even now, we don't know exactly what happened. There was no report, nothing from the government. They hired 100 scientific in the field, and there was nothing that the public can get access to. How can we help? That's a good question. I think the question will also put to Mr. Đặng Chí Hùng by cô Trần Nhã Uyên. What can we do? That's a good question. I'm very touched by your allocution, Mr. Irwin Cotler. But we should do our tiny bit. Any tiny bit count. And in those tiny bits, I would like to make a... Oh, there, another, the one here. This is Madame Su Chi Fang. She's a member of the opposition leader in Taiwan. And she wants to come to Vietnam and learn what happened. And they block her in Hanoi. They confiscate her passport. And she took the bus with some friends. She arrived in Vinh. And then the police stopped her. She couldn't get to Vũng Áng. And so she came home and she made a plight in front of the opposition and the parliament of Taiwan to ask for transparency from the Vietnamese government. And this is the tiny bit to which I am adhering. If you come to September 23rd, Collège Jean-Eudes, to help the fundraising music show. I am part of a choir. I am a singer, so you will hear my voice. Thank you.
So we will now show you a video about Formosa. Sorry, misunderstanding. Okay, so we will now present Dang Thu Nam, who's another witness who wishes to share his story. He could not be here today, but he has sent us an exclusive video telling us about his experiences. He has provided us with an introduction to his video, which I will now read. On behalf of the people in Vietnam, I would like to thank you all for allowing us to use this opportunity to expose the dark reality about human rights conditions in Vietnam. Today, we will present the case of Reverend Dang Thu Nam. He is a 42-year-old Catholic priest who has become, in spite of himself, a very known figure, an active human rights defender, and a committed environmental activist. The Formosa environment disaster, as you have just heard about, happened a little more than a year ago in Vietnam. And it was one of the worst ecological crimes committed by Formosa plastics groups from Taiwan and condoned by a government. This steel and iron making plant is responsible for illegally dumping toxic waste into the ocean, as was explained, leading to the 2016 Vietnam marine life disaster. As was explained, the lives of millions of people have been turned upside down because of this disaster. Millions of fishermen are now out of jobs, unable to provide for their families. Because of that, and other priests, such as Father Nguyen Din Thuc, have become their only hope to guide them to seek justice and compensations for the wrongs that have been done to their livelihood. This is also why the priests have become an annoyance to the polluters and corrupt officials. In order to silence them, especially Father Nam and the activists around him, the government has recently stepped up harassment threats and slandering campaigns. I would like to invite you to listen to Father Nam's audio recording, in which he pledges Canada and countries around the world to help the Vietnamese people to get justice and stop polluters from going on destroying the environment. Here's a slogan that Father Nam has used, which is now very popular in the Vietnamese movements for democracy and clean environments. He has said, "The fish need a clean ocean. The people need a clean and transparent government. Therefore, we beg with your voice and your influence, help us and help the Vietnamese people in this cause. Together, we can urge the Canadian government to put more pressure on the Vietnamese authorities whenever we do trading with them. For it is a simple wish and right that everyone on this planet is entitled to live in a clean environment, the right to voice the opinion without getting imprisonment." Once again, thank you very much for your time and your support here, everybody. So we will be displaying the video of Reverend Hang Hu Nam and his experience in Vietnam.
Kính thưa quý vị, tôi là Đặng Hữu Nam, Linh mục quản Phú Yên Giáo phận Vinh, thuộc địa bàn xã An Hòa, huyện Quỳnh Lưu, tỉnh Nghệ An. Thảm họa môi trường tại miền Trung Việt Nam đã gây ra bao thảm trạng kinh hoàng hiện tại cũng như tương lai của con người và vạn vật bị ảnh hưởng một cách nghiêm trọng. Người dân đang sống trong cảnh hỗn độn, hoang mang, lo sợ và phẫn nộ, thì các cơ quan chức năng là trốn tránh, chính quyền thì im lặng một cách vô trách nhiệm đến gây sợ. Một số quan chức còn đưa ra những phát ngôn ngang ngược, coi thường tính mạng con người và pháp luật. Trong khi người dân mất nguồn sống, mất niềm tin, thì các nhà lãnh đạo, những người cầm quyền lại chỉ lo những ghế diễn cả mà quay lưng lại với nỗi đau của người dân. Trong khi các tổ chức tôn giáo phải dân sự lên tiếng bảo vệ môi trường, yêu cầu nước sạch cho cá, minh bạch cho dân, khiếu kiện, đòi quyền lợi chính đáng và cải tạo môi trường sống, thì bị cái nhà nước mệnh danh là của dân, do dân và vì dân này ngăn cản, thẳng tay đàn áp, bắt bớ, xịt hơi tay vào mặt, đánh đập một cách tàn độc hơn là đối xử với kẻ thù. Thậm chí các công quyền còn dùng mọi nguồn lực, mọi phương tiện, mọi biện pháp, mọi lúc, mọi nơi để tuyên truyền, xuyên tạc sự thật, chạy tù cho Formosa và đàn áp, đánh phá, vu cáo, bôi nhọ, mạ lị các lãnh đạo, tổ chức tôn giáo, các nhân sĩ yêu nước và người lên tiếng đấu tranh. Formosa nhận lỗi, chính phủ nhận tiền, nhân dân nhận thảm họa, các nhà đấu tranh nhận truy nã, người yêu nước nhận tù đày, linh mục nhận đấu tố. Hơn một năm qua, nhà cầm quyền đã chăm sóc chúng tôi một cách hết sức kỹ lưỡng và đã dùng công an và côn đồ bao vây, giám sát, theo dõi, gây hấn và chặn đường hành hung. Họ đã dùng mọi nguồn lực, mọi phương tiện truyền thông đại chúng từ trung ương đến địa phương để bóp méo sự thật, xuyên tạc đời tư, bôi nhọ danh dự, mạ lị và vu cáo đủ điều xấu xa và tội lỗi. Gần đây, họ thành lập những câu lạc bộ như cựu chiến binh, phụ nữ, thanh niên, chống phản động với nhiệm vụ trấn áp giáo dân biểu tình phản đối, khiếu kiện Formosa và dần mặt các linh mục. Họ tổ chức các cuộc biểu tình, đấu tố như thời cải cách ruộng đất để kết án 20 năm tù hoặc tử hình không cần xét xử. Họ dùng tiền ngân sách mua người dân và dùng quyền ép buộc học sinh phải tham gia các cuộc biểu tình đấu tố này. Họ tổ chức cho người rải tiền đơn vu cáo, căn bằng hồn xúc phạm, kích động bạo lực và gây chia rẽ lương giáo, hoặc thành lập tổ hồng vệ binh chuyên khủng bố, ném đá, phá nhà, phá tài sản, cướp của, xúc phạm niềm tin, thiệt đường sinh kế của người dân. Họ cho người ném đá nhà thờ, phóng uế nơi thánh thiêng, xúc phạm niềm tin tôn giáo một cách nghiêm trọng. Hiện nay chúng tôi gặp vô cùng khó khăn và nguy hiểm, khó khăn về nhân lực, khó khăn về pháp lý, khó khăn về kinh tế. Bên cạnh đó, chúng tôi còn phải đối diện với hữu hàng kết bẫy của nhà cầm quyền, thì xem chúng tôi là kẻ thù của chế độ vì cách tội, phản đối Formosa, phản đối thảm họa môi trường, dám lên tiếng bảo vệ nguồn sống và quyền sống của người dân. Họ sẵn sàng dành cho chúng tôi những bản án bất công và ra tay thủ tiêu chúng tôi bất cứ lúc nào, như rất nhiều lần đã công khai tuyên bố. Tôi tha thiết kêu gọi các tổ chức bảo vệ môi trường, các chính phủ dân chủ, cũng như những ai đấu tranh cho công lý, nhân quyền và công luận thế giới lên tiếng mạnh mẽ để người dân Việt Nam chúng tôi được sống trong một môi trường trong lành và an toàn. Xin quý vị tiếp tục đồng hành, nâng đỡ và cầu nguyện cho chúng tôi. Xin cảm ơn và xin Chúa chúc lành cho quý vị.
So introducing the human rights conversation, we will have Irwin Cotler, who will be in conversation with Michael Simkin, a human rights lawyer who is currently defending the refugees in the Snowden case. Some of his activist experience are Public Service Alliance of Canada, union delegates to the World Social Forum in Tunis 2013. He's also done some activism with Public Service Alliance of Canada Union to delegate to the People's Summit in Rio 2012. He's also trained in activist theater techniques by August Boal, who's the creator of the Theater of the Oppressed. He's also provided theater workshops in Canada, US, Portugal, France, Tunisia, and Brazil. He has founded the Organization for the Refugees last November with his two colleagues in order to sponsor and support asylum seekers and refugees in immigrating to Quebec. For the Refugees has taken on the sponsorship and defense of Edward Snowden's guardian angels. These are the three families of asylum seekers who are stuck in Hong Kong. We will also have Christina Bergeron, who, as was previously mentioned, is the co-leader of an Amnesty International local group in Montreal.
Ma version française va être un peu plus courte. Donc, nous invitons maintenant M. Irwin Cotler, Michael Simkin et Christina Bergeron. Donc, une autre fois, M. Irwin Cotler était l'ancien ministre de la Justice et procureur général du Canada, fondateur du Central Wallenberg pour les droits humains au Vietnam. Pour les droits humains, point. Et Michael Simkin est un avocat pour les droits humains qui a défendu des réfugiés dans l'affaire Snowden, et Christina Bergeron, qui est une co-responsable d'un groupe local de militants d'Amnesty International. Et pour animer tout cela, on aura Sarah. Sarah qui est avec nous. Oui.
Avec Marco Machado.
Sarah et Marco Machado. Donc, une bonne main d'applaudissement pour tout le monde. Donc, on vous invite à venir vous asseoir en arrière.
So we're going to practice the first question, which is
This one work?
Testing. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to ask you a first and very general question. So where did your personal interest in pursuing? I would like to jump in first.
Hi. So first of all, thank you very much for having me here today. I'm really pleased to see such a big turnout. Obviously, there's a lot of interest, and you've really done well. To the organizers, I would like to congratulate you on doing well to reaching out to so many people. My interest, really, I have to give credit to my parents who are in the room, so that's a little awkward. But So just to go into that a little bit, I know that my mother comes from a background of having been very much involved in the civil rights movement in the United States in the 60s prior to coming to Quebec, to Canada. And so I was really raised with a sense of social justice and equality. And when I was in Cégep, I took a course in theater, but it wasn't just any theater course. It was a course called Power to the People, and it was all about this technique of using theater for activist purposes, for transforming society, for imagining the world we'd like to be, but playing out the world that we know and then trying to change it, go between the two, and have a conversation with the audience. And it's called Theater of the Oppressed, and I ended up ultimately studying with Augusto Boal, who is the founder, creator of these techniques. I remain quite close with his family to this day. When I went to law school, I dusted off some of those theater books and went back to apply some of the ideas that I'd learned in Cégep to what I was learning in law school, and try to find some practical applications right here in a Montreal context, because even in a fantastic place like Canada, we still have many people that experience oppression, that live with injustice, that face inequality and discrimination. I worked with immigrant domestic workers, particularly from the Philippines, and street youth, people that were in shelters, etc., to have conversations with audiences that were very diverse, and trying to understand, well, what kind of society we would like to see from the perspective of people that are experiencing discrimination and inequality and injustice. So anyway, I'm just going to wrap it up and say I don't actually consider myself a human rights lawyer. I'm a lawyer. I happen to do a lot of human rights activism. But this one case, which you mentioned earlier, is definitely on the top of my mind right now, and making me realize how many challenges we face all over the world in ensuring and protecting people that are vulnerable. And I hope, at least my wish, is for us here in Canada, Canadians, to lead by example.
And Mr. Cotler, where did your interest come from?
Well, interesting enough, similar to Michael Simkin, from my own parents of blessed memory, it was my father who taught me while I was still too young to appreciate the profundity of what he was trying to share with me, when he said to me that the pursuit of justice, la poursuite de la justice, is equal to all the other commandments combined. This, as he put it, is that which you must teach onto your children. But I have to say that it was my mother who, when she would hear my father saying this, would say to me that if you want to pursue justice, you have to understand, you have to feel the injustice about you. You have to go in and about your community and beyond and feel the injustice and combat the injustice. Otherwise, this will remain a theoretical abstraction. So I suspect that as a result of the teachings of my parents and some great human rights leaders in this country who they happen to be friends with, such as the late David Lewis, the head of the NDP party, or my high school teacher, Irving Layton, who railed against injustice and was very much responsible for Leonard Cohen's poetry and song about justice and injustice. It was a result of that I got involved early in the two great human rights struggles of the second half of the 20th century. The struggle against apartheid in South Africa and the struggle for human rights in the former Soviet Union. And through those struggles, got involved with the people who became the face, the identity, the vision of those struggles. Nelson Mandela in South Africa and Anatoly Sharansky, as he then was, in the Soviet Union. And through them began my involvement with political prisoners and the causes they represented. But like Michael, it began with the teachings of my parents.
Madame Bergeron?
Oui, en fait, vous m'entendez? Oui. En fait, moi, je suis impliquée avec Amnesty International depuis la moitié de mon secondaire, donc ça fait 25 ans. Au début, je pense que c'était une façon organisée de mieux comprendre le monde et puis aussi d'agir pour changer les choses. Ce qui n'est pas toujours très accessible pour les plus jeunes, mais avec Amnesty, on est organisé, donc, et puis c'est un mouvement vraiment mondial, donc on arrive à des résultats. Et puis j'ai continué avec cette organisation-là parce que effectivement, je pense qu'il y a aussi des témoignages à un moment qui nous accrochent, comme celui qu'on a eu plus tôt aujourd'hui. Donc, plus généralement, les droits humains, c'est des règles qu'on s'est données, nous, comme communauté humaine. Et c'est une très belle chose, dans mon sens. Donc, c'est pour ça que c'est important de les défendre dans notre vie de tous les jours. Et puis, le plus possible, étendre le message pour tous ceux qui ne peuvent pas le porter.
Moving on to our second question. How important to you is human rights, in particular, freedom of speech to any system of government in the world? We'll start with Mr. Simkin.
So, human rights in general, or freedom of speech in particular? So, first of all, my impression is that there's always a tension between any government and the ability of its citizens to speak out publicly. It's hard to imagine any situation in which a government benefits from being criticized publicly, benefits from people being able to mobilize against it, benefits from any threat to its own power over the territory over which it exercises its governance. So no matter where you are in the world, whether you're in a communist or capitalist or democratic society, the interest of government to have human rights for its citizens is complicated at best. All right, I'm just going to leave it at that. If you value freedom, if you value the liberty to choose that government, if you value the liberty or the ability to protect the most vulnerable members of society, then you have to want a government that at least allows for the expression of critique, for the expression of opposition, for the mobilization of groups that don't necessarily represent the majority, of groups that don't necessarily represent the existing powers in place. And so when I see the images that we all saw today, and I think, you know, where would if I could choose where I could be, if everyone could choose where they could be, would they want to be in a place where we could be here on stage and say, hey, you know, got to do better in Canada, got to do better in Vietnam, or would I want to be in a place where people are going to be beaten by the police and for just expressing their opinions, for just expressing concern about not being able to earn a livelihood? And clearly, you have to want to fight to be able to say what you want to say. I mean, that's freedom. That's the basic element of freedom. Assembly, freedom of the press, etc. What concerns me sometimes is that we forget how fragile that freedom, even in a place like Canada, can be. Like I said, the relationship between government and freedom of expression is at best tenuous. And we saw that here because some of these images are not so far removed from ones that I recognized from the streets of Montreal only 5 years ago, okay? Where people were marching in tens of thousands, and you had police on horses with batons and riot gear every day, and that struggle was very, very real. So, again, I want to live in a society where people can express themselves. I want to live in a society where people can assemble together and express their opposition together. And I want to live in a society where the media can report on it the next day.
Thank you. Mr. Cotler?
If I may quote Mandela on this point, where he said that the struggle for human rights was at the core of the three great human rights movements of the 20th century, and if you go even to the 21st, namely the struggle for freedom, the struggle for democracy, the struggle for equality. That human rights is at the core, and also as he emphasized the universality of human rights, that human rights are intrinsic to each of us because they are part of our common humanity, part of our common human dignity. We're on the eve of what will be the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it's worth revisiting that to see the sense in which it is the assault on human rights that has been responsible for so much of the barbarous acts of humankind, as the Declaration says in its preamble, and the promotion and protection of human rights that is so crucial, Michael said, wherever we are. As to freedom of expression, I think our courts have put it best. I recall the Supreme Court of Canada, even before the advent of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, where it's a central right in the Charter. It said about freedom of expression that liberty in these matters, i.e. freedom of expression, is little less important to man than breathing is to his physical existence. And that freedom of expression, as the Supreme Court of the United States put it, is a condition for the protection of all other rights. And so really it's at the core of human rights and of the promotion and protection of those rights.
Oui, c'est ce que j'allais dire en fait, c'est que le droit à la liberté d'expression est vraiment un révélateur, un précurseur aussi de plusieurs des autres droits en démocratie ailleurs dans le monde. Donc, tout ce qui est lié à la censure aussi, on voit des liens avec ça, des liens avec la liberté artistique, avec la liberté de presse, bien sûr, la liberté de rassemblement, la liberté de religion, tout ça est lié à une forme de liberté d'expression. Donc, c'est pour ça que c'est un révélateur puissant, puisque lorsqu'un pays refuse qu'on s'exprime librement, critiquement sur ce genre, sur des éléments précis, il y a une volonté de contrôle évidente. Donc, il y a des limites peut-être à pas dépasser dans certains cas, mais en général, ça fait partie aussi de ce que c'est une personne humaine complète, capable d'exercer sa pensée critique, de l'exprimer, de la partager. Donc, il y a beaucoup de liens avec les autres droits, mais aussi comme personne humaine, je pense que ça fait vraiment partie intégrante de tout ce qu'on est pour lui.
So moving on to the next question. This gets more Vietnam specific. We're going to ask you, why do you think Vietnam isn't a modern or common topic of discussion when people speak about human rights today? Do you think it's a reflection on modern media or us as a society? Je vais commencer avec la question. Voilà.
Oui, c'est une bonne question, en fait. Une des raisons, je pense que c'est que la population vietnamienne au Canada est très, très bien intégrée. L'arrivée est arrivée. Les gens sont arrivés il y a quelques décennies maintenant. Ça ne fait plus de vagues et il y a peu d'événements aujourd'hui au Vietnam qui font vraiment les manchettes internationales, quoique ça devrait, comme on l'a vu avec le drame de Formosa. Mais il y a peu de relais puisque c'est comme si la diaspora gardait un peu cette information-là pour elle, j'ai l'impression. C'est des impressions parce que même si je suis allée au Vietnam, c'est pas la diffusion de l'information, on l'a dit, les médias sont entièrement contrôlés par le gouvernement. Donc, pour que l'information sorte, c'est très difficile. Faut reconnaître ça. Donc, oui, une question de critique médiatique parce qu'il nous faut de l'information internationale pour que on ait cette information-là. Nous, comme Canadiens, comme Québécois, comme Montréalais, on sait les médias sont limités, on n'a pas toujours l'impression que cette information-là est essentielle, mais elle l'est vraiment pour qu'on comprenne ce qui se passe ailleurs, parce que ça nous touche aussi directement ici, comme le fait qu'il y a des gens de cette diaspora-là qui vivent ici. Donc, j'ai l'impression que ça circule peu à cause de en partie des médias, mais aussi certainement du contrôle de l'information sur place. Si.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And on the way down here, I was driving with a taxi driver whom I know, and he said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Concordia. He said, what? I said, a human rights forum. We've talked before about human rights issues. And he said, so what are you going to be talking about today? And I said, human rights in Vietnam. And he said, Vietnam? He said, I never hear about human rights I never hear about Vietnam. In other words, he was expressing almost a more general response of a lack of understanding and appreciation, let alone outrage at what is happening in Vietnam. And when I look at it in terms of the international community, Vietnam not only is not taken to task internationally, not only is not seriously sanctioned for the kinds of human rights violations which we saw so graphically and presented in the witness testimony, but how many of us know that Vietnam is actually a member of the United Nations Council on Human Rights, which is the council that has been established for the promotion and protection of human rights. And so it makes a mockery of human rights protection when a major human rights violator is elected to a council on human rights under the auspices of the UN intended to promote and protect human rights. So I think one of the first things we have to do is really stop rewarding Vietnam for its violations of human rights. And begin combating the impunity in Vietnam, really a culture of impunity where people are not held accountable for their violations of human rights at all. And I have to say with this, I'll close. When I mentioned that the last 3 sessions of the Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Human Rights, on which I presided as Vice Chair, the last 3 sessions of my last weeks in Parliament were about human rights in Vietnam, because I wanted to make sure that the end of my term would at least highlight what was going on in Vietnam. And when we held a press conference to share with the press and with the Canadian people our findings and recommendations regarding the situation of human rights in Vietnam, not one press person came. So this is part of the problem, that human rights violations in Vietnam are not on the radar screen, not on the radar screen of governments, not on the radar screen of the media, on the wrong radar screen when it comes to the United Nations. And we have to make the issue of human rights in Vietnam, as Cynthia and Valerie have done with organizing this conference, the mobilization of shame against the human rights violators in Vietnam, and where we raise our voices here in Quebec and Canada in common cause with them.
So I think one of the challenges is that there's so much competition out there for who's the worst human rights violator. Really, there's only a couple dozen countries on earth that in any meaningful way respect human rights. So that's the starting point where you're at. Then you think about, you open the paper on any given day and you probably only hear, read about a couple dozen countries mostly those ones, in the newspapers, or the countries that we're in a conflict with directly or receiving massive waves of asylum seekers from. So we have a bit of a belly button approach to how we view the world, or how the world is presented to us in our media consumption. So I don't really hold it against anybody in particular that we're not more aware of what's going on in Vietnam. But I do see a very important challenge to trying to raise awareness about what's going on in Vietnam, because there are so many places where we're not hearing about what's going on. We're not hearing about the reality there. And unless you have groups of grassroots, locally based activists to raise that awareness, I thought it was interesting. There really are a number of mechanisms for engaging your parliamentarians and whatnot, and having meaningfully putting it on the agenda. But without that, it's very hard to make it a topic of media consumption. And that's, I hate to say it in those terms, but that's where we're at. For people to know what's going on, how are they going to find out about it? They turn on the TV at 6 o'clock, they read the newspaper in the morning, they talk about it around the water cooler at work.
Thank you.
So to all of you, what is the role of Canada in human rights worldwide, especially in Vietnam? And additionally, do you think Canada should prioritize human rights situations like that of Vietnam? So for Mr. Cotler.
I think Canada should prioritize human rights, generally speaking. I don't believe that we have yet made the promotion and protection of human rights a priority on our government and timetable as a matter of principle and policy. And this has not yet been mainstreamed in the consciousness and of our foreign government foreign policy. So I think it's important that we seek to make it, number one, a priority with respect to our foreign policy, as human rights as a priority, as a matter of principle and policy. Second, I think it's important to engage our parliamentarians in this task. They are, after all, the trustees of their various constituents. And I have to say that I got engaged in human rights in Vietnam because of the Vietnamese community in my riding, who brought the issues of human rights in Vietnam to me early on when I was first elected. And we had ongoing encounters with respect to what I would call the pain and plight of situation of human rights in Vietnam. And that's why the reason I would be making ongoing representations or presenting petitions or holding hearings on human rights in Vietnam was because of the impetus that came from my Vietnamese constituents. So all of us here are constituents. We're from different ridings. We should be engaging our parliamentarians in that regard. And we need to mainstream the situation of human rights in Vietnam, not only in terms of what the government is doing and Parliament is doing, but in civil society, amongst NGOs, amongst the media, amongst those engaged in particular with issues related to freedom of expression. I would like to see also the plight of political prisoners in Vietnam better appreciated, acknowledged, and addressed. You know, I've always said with regard to Mandela that he endured 27 years in a South African prison, and he came out to preside not only over the dismantling of apartheid, but to become the president of the first democratic, egalitarian, free South Africa. Now, that tells you about the importance of freeing political prisoners in whatever country they may be imprisoned, because the freeing of political prisoners can take us down the road to the freeing of that country, the democratization of that country, the protection of human rights in that country. So I'd like to see parliamentarians and civil society here adopting, if you will, political prisoners in Vietnam, giving them a name, giving them a face, giving them an expression, and by advocating for the political prisoners in Vietnam, we will be advocating for democracy and human rights in Vietnam.
Thank you. Madame Bacheron.
Oui, je vais essayer d'être. Je ne veux pas reprendre tous les points que M. Cotler a fait qui sont évidemment très, très importants. Donc, que peut faire le Canada? Le Canada peut mener par l'exemple et peut aussi faire en sorte que sa politique étrangère met en priorité les droits humains. Donc, c'est pas une question de économie ou droits humains, c'est économie et droits humains. C'est pas sécurité ou droits humains, c'est sécurité et droits humains. Et ça, il faut que le message vienne des gens, vienne des électeurs, comme M. Cotler l'a dit, et que ce message-là, cette pression-là vienne du public. Donc, c'est à tout le monde de s'engager et de transmettre les messages pour dire non, c'est pas acceptable, les chars d'assaut en Arabie Saoudite. Juste pas acceptable, ils vont l'utiliser contre la population, on en a des preuves. Donc, c'est un exemple, mais il y a des façons, on a des intérêts économiques avec le Vietnam. Dans la politique économique, on ne peut pas laisser de côté les droits humains. Il faut que ce soit économie et droits humains, sécurité et droits humains partout.
Merci. Simkin.
So I really appreciate what my friends have said here, and with respect especially to Canada's outward policies towards other nations, I want to come back to what I had initially said in my opening, which is that I think it's important for us to be leaders by example, that we have to recognize that it's important that we implement the strongest structures for state protection of human rights in this country, and where there are lacunes, that we take action, that we as citizens push for our country to be even more fair, even more democratic, even more responsible in its treatment of vulnerable people in Canada, and lead by example in that way. But I agree completely with respect to how we need to be more outwardly vocal as well.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the last question.
All right, so finally to conclude, we're just going to ask, what fights do you think are realistic for the Vietnamese to win right now or in the future? So, Madame Bacheron.
Je ne vais pas répondre de façon très précise, mais pour moi, c'est clair que l'éducation et l'éducation aux droits humains, c'est fondamental. Donc, pour qu'une démocratie fonctionne, il faut une société civile forte et éduquée, conscientisée. Donc, pour que le changement arrive, eh bien, ça doit venir de la base. Une démocratie imposée par le haut, ça ne fonctionne pas. Des élections imposées par le haut, ça ne fonctionne pas. Ça ne change pas en profondeur les mentalités. Chez Amnesty, on veut changer les lois, les mentalités, la vie des gens. C'est en éduquant les gens en premier, en les éduquant à leurs droits qu'on y arrive.
Merci. Mr. Cotler?
Oui, je suis d'accord que l'importance est l'éducation et la sensibilisation de la population. And that's why I really want to commend Valerie and Cynthia. These kinds of gatherings, send a message, and not only to our fellow co-citoyens here about the importance of human rights in Vietnam, but they send a message to the people in Vietnam that we are standing with them, that they are not alone, that we will continue to act in solidarity with them. And I know from the political prisoners with whom I've been involved in different countries over the years, they always would tell me when they got out that what kept them going was the fact that they knew that there were people advocating on their behalf, that they knew that they were not alone. And so when you have, as we will soon, a march in the streets, it's not only a mobilization of awareness here, it's also a mobilization of shame against the human rights violator in Vietnam, and it's also standing in common cause with the Vietnamese people. And it is something that we will need to do, because I always used to tell my children when they're growing up that human rights is not an exercise in cocktail advocacy. It's not a matter of taking a placard and marching, once a year for human rights and saying, I've done, my work for human rights. It means being in the trenches of human rights day in and day out. That's what the struggle for human rights is all about.
So it would be very easy for me to say, oh, all that needs to be done is this and that and this and that. And I when I originally thought about the question, I thought, well, social media, the internet, that's really the way people are organizing these days on the margins of society to make groups of opposition and whatnot. And it was somewhat effective in Tunisia 4 years ago and in other parts of the Arab world. And artists are always at the forefront of resistance, whether it's theater, or whether it's, visual arts or music. But then here you come today and tell me, oh my gosh, it's really not working. You can be an artist, you'll be put in jail. So at the end of the day, you know what the answer is? The answer isn't going to come from me sitting on a couch here in Montreal. The answer is going to come from the people that are living the experiences of violence and oppression in Vietnam. And all I can do, and all I hope we can do, is at least express solidarity with those people as they rise up and take back the power for themselves.
Thank you guys for all your contributions to the conversation. We really appreciate your views and your interest in the rights of Vietnam and Vietnamese people. Thank you.
Sorry, we asked that everyone who spoke today to come up for our 20-minute Q&A. We will have 2 mics. We would appreciate it if everyone were to make a line in the 2 aisles here, 1 and 2, and we will give you a mic to ask your questions.
We are probably going to have to share mics.
Question, Dr. Irwin Cotler. Durant plusieurs décennies, l'Occident a aidé au développement économique du Vietnam, espérant qu'avec l'enrichissement du pays, la démocratisation progresse. Alors que c'est le contraire qui se produit. Plus le gouvernement est riche, plus il dispose de moyens pour accentuer la répression. Alors ma question, c'est de savoir si l'Occident, ou le Canada en particulier, a-t-il l'intention de reconsidérer cette politique de coopération et lier le développement, l'aide économique avec le respect des droits de l'homme et le respect de l'environnement au Vietnam. Est-ce qu'il y a une intention de reconsidérer cette politique?
Alors, le problème n'est pas l'engagement avec le Vietnam. Le problème est le moyen de l'engagement. Par exemple, le Canada accorde beaucoup d'aide et beaucoup de prêts à Vietnam. La question est ce qui se passe avec l'aide et avec les prêts. Et c'est nécessaire d'avoir une transparence de notre activité en Vietnam et aussi pour notre coopération de respecter la justice sociale et d'assurer que notre coopération ne sont pas complicite avec ce qui se passe en Vietnam et en même temps que le gouvernement combat cette culture d'impunité en Vietnam et de ne voter pas pour l'élection, par exemple, du Vietnam à la Conseil des Nations Unies pour les droits de la personne. Ce sont quelques des exemples qu'on peut peut-être commencer à protéger les Vietnamiens.
Ma deuxième question.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the organizer, Mr. Fan and Mr. Machado, and thank you all of you participating today. I am just a lucky Canadian living in a free society, and this is not exactly a cocktail atmosphere, but we are participating for Vietnam human rights and Vietnam democracy. My question to you all, if it's possible, like Mr. Nguyen asked the last question, how can we help the Vietnamese people? I heard a lot of talk about sending money, helping all this or that. And also, this is critical, how do the Vietnamese people bring Formosa to the international court, like the father in Vietnam asking for? Is there any mechanism for that? If it's possible, or just a feel good exercise or PR stunt? Can we do something practical and real? Thank you very much.
Ayoi. Very difficult question. And I do know there's a movement to bring the Vietnamese government to the international court. But I cannot say anything about it because I don't want to harm the ongoing movement. Maybe Michael. Law.
First of all, thank you for the question. It's a good question. I want to answer right now. The first thing I want to speak for everybody, make an announcement for all of government in the world. Because now a lot of the government, like Canada, America, they have the contact with the Vietnamese government. Also, they send money to Vietnamese government below FDI or ODA. The Vietnamese government corrupts money from another government, and they pay for police and army, for abuse, for make violence, for control my country. Now, the first thing we need to show with every citizen of the other country, like Canada, because they vote to the government. The Canada government have pressure from the citizen, for example, and they stop send money, stop to help the Vietnamese government, because we want to cut the economic and technician for Vietnamese government. And second thing, I try to contact with international court already, and we can do with criminal of the Ho Chi Minh, criminal for the Vietnamese government, also criminal of the Formosa. We can do that. We try, and I hope we can do for next year.
I'm sorry, I think you missed my question, and I'm not here for propaganda. I'm looking for legal mind to answer the question. Is there any mechanism to bring Formosa Steel Company to the international court or whatever court? However, they already paid $500 million to the Communist Vietnam government, and according to Mr. Nguyen, would be about $700 per person. So I don't know how many dollars we can raise to add it into that $500 million. Thank you. Mr. Cotler, if you can help me out.
Well, with regard to the International Criminal Court, the jurisdiction there is determined by the Treaty for an International Criminal Court. And it begins with bringing a country before the International Criminal Court only if that country is a state party to the treaty, or the crimes have been committed on the territory of a country that is a state party. Because Vietnam is not a state party to the treaty, it has, in that sense, immunity from prosecution. There's one other way in which it can be brought before the court, even if Vietnam is not a state party, and that's if the United Nations Security Council refers the matter to the International Criminal Court. It's unlikely, if not impossible, that that will happen, because if there's one veto on this will be exercised on the Security Council, likely by both China and Russia, then it will not get to the International Criminal Court. That doesn't mean that there may not be other means of holding them accountable. For example, in Canada, we enacted in the year 2000 War Crimes and Crimes Against Humanity Act, which gives Canada universal jurisdiction to, in fact, imprison any major Vietnamese human rights violator that would be found on Canadian territory and who could be stand accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity as set forth in our own criminal law statute, which was an implementation of the Rome Treaty. The second is to take civil actions, again, through the use of Canadian courts against those who would be responsible where such a jurisdiction can be exercised.
Moi, j'ai une question, mais c'est en deux parties. Ça concerne la catastrophe de Formosa. C'est une catastrophe écologique sans précédent pour le Vietnam. Ça touche 4 provinces du centre du Vietnam avec des centaines de tonnes de poissons échoués sur la plage, tandis que le gouvernement dit que les poissons sont comestibles et qu'ils importent à l'étranger, en Occident. Est-ce que l'Occident vérifie la comestibilité de ces poissons avant de nous nourrir avec ces produits? Et deuxièmement, comment ça se fait que Greenpeace, il est très silencieux dans ce cas-ci? On n'en parle pas du tout. Normalement, ils font beaucoup de bruit. Et je trouve ça vraiment difficile à croire.
Basically, her question is, do the Canadians and Western countries check for the safety to consume fish that were imported from Vietnam? So that's basically the question. Do you guys...
C'est pourquoi Greenpeace ne dit rien, on n'en parle pas, tandis que c'est une catastrophe vraiment sans précédent qui touche comme 200 000 personnes du centre du Vietnam qui ont perdu leur job, soit dans le tourisme, soit dans la pêche, directement, comme M. Bing disait tantôt, 65 000 de pêcheurs qui ont perdu leur gagne-pain.
It's also wondering why Greenpeace doesn't take any action towards what's going on in the environment in Vietnam, and as well as if there's any measure taken from any other party involved in the environment.
I can answer the Greenpeace part of the question. Actually, Vietnamplify, we actually went to see Greenpeace when we were looking for people to speak about the Formosa disaster. So we did go to Greenpeace. When we went there, they actually looked if there were branches in other countries, especially in Vietnam for Greenpeace. It was very, very difficult. From what I understand, organizations like Amnesty International, Greenpeace, these organizations that fight for human rights and or for environment in Asia it's very, very hard for them to have a big base, donc avoir une grande base et avoir beaucoup de support. Donc ce qu'il me disait, c'est que le cas du Vietnam, il ne le connaissait pas. Et même quand il parlait aux autres branches, c'était pas une branche qui était au Vietnam, c'était une branche qui était en Thaïlande. Donc au Vietnam, Greenpeace n'a pas beaucoup d'action en fait. Et même quand les personnes de Greenpeace voulaient en parler, ils avaient de la difficulté à trouver de la documentation sur le sujet. Pour la question de la comestibilité des poissons, est-ce qu'on a quelqu'un qui vend du poisson? Qui peut...
I can just say that, the governments, federal and provincial, the federal and provincial consumer protection agencies are obliged, as a matter of law and policy, to ensure the safety of products that are imported, certainly to ensure the safety of any food products and the like. But here, to get more specific, we have an environmental minister, and Catherine McKenna, on the larger issues. We have a Minister of Fisheries and Dominique Leblanc. Let's put those questions to them when Parliament convenes, and therefore we'll have their responses on the record, and it will be at least entered into the record that Canadians are concerned about these issues.
Bonjour tout le monde, je me présente, si les gens ne me connaissent pas, je suis Yaki Pamlou de Canadian Youth Human Rights for Vietnam, la fameuse organisation canadienne SEUV, fabuleusement appelée JCDPV, Jeunes Canadiens pour les droits de la personne au Vietnam. Je voulais personnellement remercier Valérie ainsi que Christian qui m'ont invité personnellement pour venir sous l'organisation. J'ai pas de questions, c'est des commentaires positifs. Je voulais des événements comme aujourd'hui qui est très important. Madame la députée Anne-Marie Touquach, elle a mentionné tantôt. Le 12 juin dernier, nous, on avait fait une journée de droits de la personne au Parlement du Canada, dont il y avait différents députés fédéraux, conservateurs, libéraux, députés. Et je vois aujourd'hui des événements comme aujourd'hui, qui permet de, ensemble, la jeunesse canadienne, quel que soit nos aînés, et je vois que ta collègue à ton côté, je pense qu'elle est italienne, je pense aussi portugaise, ce qui est bien parce que on n'est pas juste des Vietnamiens d'origine. J'ai vu aussi un Africain, je pense, ou un Noir. Puis, merci. Puis, c'est le fun parce que ça unit ensemble. Puis, comme elle a dit, je pense Mme Gingras, votre nom de famille, Mère Joron, excusez-moi. Et, comme vous dites, quand vous allez au Vietnam, que vous voyez rarement, le gouvernement qui vous donne des nouvelles, tout. Ce que je finirais par dire, puis je vais le traduire en vietnamien parce que la diaspora vietnamienne connaît cette fameuse citation de l'ancien président Nguyen Van Thieu. N'écoutez pas ce que les communistes font. Non, n'écoutez pas ce que les communistes font. Regardez ce qu'ils font. Donc, comme on dit en vietnamien, de nghe qui dit comme ça. Nói, hai nhìn qui dit non làm. Donc, je finirai par dire, continuez votre action. Puis, on est très fiers de collaborer avec vous. Puis, tous ensemble pour un Vietnam indépendant. Merci.
OK, donc nous allons terminer ici pour la période de questions. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde d'avoir participé à la conférence aujourd'hui, mais ne partez pas.
So we would like to thank all of the speakers and the volunteers who have made this conference a wonderful experience and who have informed many people here, I think, on the situation in Vietnam. We will now talk to you guys about the march, so please remain here for further instructions.
All right, so before we begin, before I give the mic to Andre, who is going to be the leader of the march, we would like to remind you one thing. Today, we are fighting against violence and brutality. So let's set the example and let's march peacefully. So yes, Andre is invited, and please remember that each person who walks on the street of Montreal today represents one person in Vietnam who cannot do it him or herself. We know it's very difficult to go out there and scream. It's not something that's very natural to us, but we have a weapon. We have the right to speak, so let's use it to help other people. So please be a lot of people to do this all together. So do you have something to add?
Or I'll we hope you guys have enjoyed the conference and that you have a lot of fun for the march. And again, give Vietnam your voice.
Bonjour à tous, mon nom est André. C'est moi qui va guider la marche pour aujourd'hui. Donc, je voulais tous vous donner des instructions pour la marche. Donc, tout d'abord, c'est une marche qui dure 20 minutes, 20 à 25 minutes. On commence du...
Is it possible to ask people to stay seated just during the instructions?
Donc, c'est une marche qui commence d'ici. On sera ensuite sur la rue Guy, on finit sur Sainte-Catherine et on longe Sainte-Catherine pour finir à Square Phillips. Donc, la rue Sainte-Catherine est bloquée juste pour l'événement. Le SPVM a bloqué la rue pour nous. Donc, inquiétez-vous pas si vous voyez des policiers, c'est tout à fait normal. Ils sont avisés de la marche et ils sont avisés du mouvement. Donc, comme vous avez vu à l'entrée et dans l'auditorium, il y a eu beaucoup de pancartes pour la marche. Donc, je vous invite grandement à les prendre. Prenez celle que vous préférez et sautez dessus pour la prendre et l'amener à la marche. Deuxièmement, j'aimerais vous apprendre des chants et des cris qu'on va dire durant la marche pour faire du bruit. Parce que comme Valérie et Cynthia l'ont dit, on veut faire du bruit pour les gens qui ne peuvent pas le faire sans compromettre à leur sécurité. Donc, on offre notre voix à eux. Donc, premièrement, les 4 premiers slogans qu'on va dire, c'est super simple. C'est moi qui va dire quelque chose et vous allez juste répliquer en disant « For Vietnam ». Donc, si je dis « Human Rights », vous allez dire « For Vietnam ». Ouais, c'était bon, c'était pas pire. OK. Si je dis « End Violence », vous allez dire « For Vietnam ». Good, OK. Ensuite, « Clean Waters ». For Vietnam. Excellent, excellent. OK. Et le dernier, Freedom of Speech. For Vietnam. Super. Ça, c'était la première partie. Ça, c'était the easy part. Pour la deuxième partie, c'est super simple encore. On a fait un petit jeu de mots avec le slogan. Donc, quand je vais dire What's fishy about Vietnam, vous allez dire Formosa. Donc, What's fishy about Vietnam? Formosa. Good. OK. Et le dernier, ça va être en français et non en anglais. Donc, moi, je vais dire Vietnam. Vous allez dire pas à vendre. Ensuite, je vais répliquer par Vietnam et vous allez dire marche ensemble. Donc, Vietnam. Pas à vendre. Vietnam. Marche ensemble. Super. So, I'm going to give you the instructions in English. Hi, so my name is Andre. I will be leading the march for today. So, as you all know, we will be having a march on St. Catherine Street. It's a 20 to 25 minutes long march. So we'll start at the building here. Then we'll go on Guy. We'll then go on St. Catherine Street, and then we'll end up at Square Phillips. Don't worry if you see any policemen. They are aware of our march and our movement. So it's completely normal if you see them. The St. Catherine Street is blocked only for our march. So we will be walking on the street where the cars are supposedly going on the street. And as you all saw at the entrance of the building and in the auditorium, there's a lot of posters that you can take for the march. So take your favorite one and bring it to the march. And finally, I will just want to teach you and practice with you the few chants that we will be having, that we will be screaming during the march. So the 4 first one are really simple. I will be screaming something, and you will reply to me by saying "For Vietnam." So again, human rights.
For Vietnam.
Good. And violence.
For Vietnam.
Clean waters.
For Vietnam.
Freedom of speech.
For Vietnam.
Good. Okay. The second part of the chants will be me saying, "What's fishy about Vietnam?" And then yeah, exactly. So you all know it. So let's practice it now. So what's fishy about Vietnam?
Formosa.
Perfect. And for the final part, it's going to be in French. So I will be saying Vietnam. Then you guys will be saying pas à vendre. Exactly. Then I will be saying Vietnam again. And then you'll finish by marche ensemble. So Vietnam.
Pas à vendre.
Vietnam.
Marche ensemble.
Perfect. Et finalement, quand je vais dire faites du bruit, just do as much noise as you can. And please give me your voice, your energy. It's going to be a great march.
And it's a beautiful day. We just had, on a juste eu an announcement that said that there was one person who got injured on the street during the gay parade. So we will probably have to we will do the march, but we might have to do it maybe on the sidewalk for security reasons. But let's do it. It's a beautiful day to walk for human rights.
Super, donc je vous invite tous à prendre des posters et des pancartes.
10 minutes in front of the building on the street.